Okay.
Okay, seeing it's 7:15, I'm gonna call the East Haddam Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order for January 28, 2020. Could I have attendance, please?
Greg Brownell,
Here.
James Curtin,
Here.
Justin Anderson, absent. Bernard Gillis.
Here.
Ed Gubbins.
Here.
Richard Pettinelli. Here. Louis Salacrup.
Here.
Susan Kinsman.
Here.
And Joe Zaid, absent.
So have you said fill in for Justin this evening? Okay. Minutes of our past meeting, which would be January 14th, 2020.
Had a few things.
Just, I don't know if it was brought up yet, but the template for the, says 2019. so-
Got it, circled it.
Under page 2, under discussion, number 2, I'm just questioning, it says, discussion ensued in regard to future meetings that are scheduled to depict CBIG district. Is that the right way to word that? Depict or discuss? What do we?
Discuss.
Discuss.
Discuss,
Okay. Discuss. All right. And then on page 3, public hearings, the second paragraph is the spelling on, it's Clar, not Clark. So,
Just noticed
Yeah.
that.
there was one,
Clark, the C should be capital, right?
no, it's a KL there. It's
One
KL.
word or two?
Crest.
Clar dash crest.
Mhm.
Clar's, KLAR.
Should that be a capital?
Yes.
Yeah, the second one could be a capital. I usually dash it. I don't know, is that what they do?
Yeah.
Anyway, and then on page 4, top of the page there, that second paragraph, the last line. Discussion ensued in regard to the minimum standards that will apply to, I believe it should say like the renovation of a 6,000 square foot structure. And then that same page, 1, 2, 3 down under what Mr. Brownell opened the hearing to the public, stated that Sharon McLennan of 9 Pinehurst Drive in Wisconsin stated that she does not think the regulations should be changed for, I think it should say for Banner Resort Zone, not from. That doesn't make any sense, so. Then on the last page, under what Mr. Greg Daigle said, the last line, Mr. Winter stated that the commission cannot entertain an application unless it is a permitted use under zoning regulation. I don't know, is that, or should be a permitted use under the zoning regulations, or is that all right, that wording, or not? I mean, I don't know, could leave it.
I kind of think it's what he said,
that the
under
way
a
you
special
said it?
exception review instead of changing the regulation.
All right, then we just leave that, we're fine, I'm good.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I guess we'll accept the minutes as amended. I didn't get it. I'm sorry?
Making a motion.
Oh.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any bills? I didn't get any?
No bills?
Okay. Okay, I would entertain a motion to change order of business.
So moved.
Do I
Second.
have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Favor? E and Bs.
Is it gonna be to discuss something that's not on the agenda, like an open session where I could ask some questions as far as not for the zoning, something else?
Let me finish what I have here first, sir.
Good evening.
Scott.
Good crowd tonight. I asked Mr. Ventris to put on the agenda an issue that I raised with him about 1.5 years ago and wanted to bring to the attention of the board. For the record, my name is Scott Jezik, and I think most of you may know that I'm a practicing attorney in town, and I've been here for over 40 years. I live out at Bashan Lake on Sunset Acres in the same house since 1957, and before that, I lived briefly at the Moodus Reservoir down by the causeway, also on the water. And while it's a real privilege to live out there, there are a couple of things that have changed dramatically over the last few years, rather rapidly, and I try to discuss the issue with Mr. Ventris, but when I did, I realized maybe I wasn't as prepared as I should be, and so I've done a little work in the last 18 months, and that's what I wanted to bring to your attention. Most of you even probably know exactly where I live, but 2 summers ago, one morning in July, about 6:30, my wife went down to go for a swim at the lake early in the morning before the waters churned up. And she came up promptly because there were, at our count, a dozen people sleeping on the property next to us and onto our property. I went down there when she got me, and I then kind of recognized what was going on. I went across the street to a house where I knew these people were from. There were another, I counted 7 people sleeping outside. This is at a house that has no hot water, no shower, no bathing, no well, no septic. There were about 20 people or more there for this 2-week stay at that particular time. That was probably the most acute incident, but it's something that goes on all summer long. Looking to the north, on a regular basis, there's another place that has a 50-foot lot. I've been in the house many times, the same as the one across the street. It's got 2 bedrooms. Rents out with what I count 8 cars. I don't know how many people, but 8 cars on a 50-foot lot. You can queue them 2 deep on the lot, so that means 6 cars are out on the road. And this goes on for most of the month of August. Regularly during the summer, I come home from work. I cannot get into my garage. Now, you know, if you've been out where I live, I've got parking in front of my garage and the garage. I don't have enough room to make the turn into the garage because of cars parked there. They're not from the house across the street from me. They're at least 200 feet down the road from me, where the cars don't have room on the street to park any longer. There's so many people that are renting there, and they end up parking across the street from me because that's the next available space. I think that it's time that the Commission and the Chatham Health consider some kind of regulation for these short-term rentals. I think they're commonly called the Airbnb. That's how it was on the agenda. I think there are septic, water issues, parking issues, and frankly, I know there shouldn't be outhouses. I don't mind the outhouses there if they were screened, but the banging doors, when you're on the street all summer long from those things, there should be something done. And I am not opposed to the short-term rentals. I think that's a right that somebody has with respect to owning their property. But I do believe that the Commission should be looking into the fact that no one should be doing this if they don't have adequate septic, adequate water supply, and off-street parking. And I'll mention something else. At least 3 times in the past last year's winter, the town's full-size dump trucks couldn't navigate our street when it snowed to plow the street. One of those instances, there was so severe, like we couldn't get our own vehicles out because we had an unusual snow of more than a foot that day. So this is a problem that's not just limited to the summer, and I think that the Commission in its planning function should take a look at it. So, what did I do the last year and a half? I went to school and took some continuing education on this issue. And I'd like to just give the syllabus from that course that I took so that you can have it. Maybe it can be copied and circulated. I would be happy to work with the Commission, go over the towns that have regulated this. I don't know if you think that's self-serving because I do live out there. But I think it's an important issue, and I'm only speaking for what I've observed, but I can tell you that many people in the lake communities, which I am involved with, have mentioned this issue to me over the last couple of years, and it's an issue that's accelerating, and I don't think it's going to disappear anytime soon. So I just mark this for the record. If you have some questions, I'd try to entertain them. Otherwise, I know you got a busy agenda, and I'd move on. Yes?
Have you addressed this with your association to be part of your bylaws? Because I know at Laurel Cove, we have very specific, you don't have short-term rentals.
The answer is yes, but the Sunset Acres Beach Association regulations do not address the short-term rentals. The only thing that they address is the issue of the outhouses. And I'm not going to get too much satisfaction or relief there, considering the fact that we have the community beach, which is served during the summer by an outhouse.
Right.
And I have asked them that to consider screening it like you've done over at the senior center where you have an outhouse around the track. Makes a lot of sense, but it's nicely screened. That's not the case at the
How
lake.
about limiting the Airbnb and the short-term rentals then?
I don't think that's something that could be done through the association. I'm fairly confident of that. I think it needs to be based on the investigation that I've done, either a statewide, which doesn't seem to be the case in most communities. Most states are delegating this responsibility to the local land use authorities, although the state of Vermont, which is close by, has enacted a state law to address the short-term housing. But if you look at Sunset Acres particularly, that's predominantly seasonal people, and it's predominantly the seasonal people who are renting the houses out when they're not there, and it's quite self-serving, and I don't think that's a source of any remedy for me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yep. I guess you can make copies and.
Make
circulate it.
copies, yep.
Agricultural regulations.
I left that with you the last time to kind of review. And if you had any comments, questions, changes before I went to the Agricultural Commission, I would incorporate them and bring them, and then talk to the Agricultural Commission to get recommendations from them to come back to you.
Anyone review it and?
I do. I just had some wording changes to make it consistent in the sections where you're talking about farm and garden produce under on page 1. For such purposes, one stand not more than, because we talk later in the line about paragraph about less than, so it should be consistent.
Okay.
Rather than not over, use substitute more than for over. In 9 to 10, 9 through 12, and 9, 4, 10, it should be farm and garden produce to be consistent with the previous section.
Yep.
Likewise, more than rather than over. Likewise, same change in section 9 to 10, 9 through 12, 9, 4, 10. And in your definition section 29.2, agriculture means agriculture as defined in, and take out the section 1-1 subsection Q of the Connecticut General Statute. You don't need defines.
In that last part there, the this was,
Agriculture as defined,
oh,
the D
gotcha,
instead of S.
gotcha,
And you
Yep.
take out the.
yep.
In hobby farm, the proposed under poultry includes but is not limited to domestic fowl rather than fowls.
Yep.
You're good.
Again, the more than substituting for over in your existing section, existing 2014 accessory uses to agriculture. And that's all I have.
Okay, anyone else need to add to this?
No, I'd love to hear what the Agricultural Commission has to say on it.
Okay, so send it off.
One last question on the commercial slaughtering facility. Is there any qualifying language that we need to add about subject to USDA approval or the Health Department or Department of Agriculture? That's under your definition section 29.2, proposed commercial slaughtering facility.
Page 3.
Thank you.
Bottom of the page.
Jurisdiction anyway. I would just be leery of listing a couple missing ones. So if they have jurisdiction, is that enough to cover it?
I can phrase it so that I think there's levels, so let me investigate that.
Put a footnote on that, Jim, would you, that you're looking into that, but still send it off?
Yeah.
Hold it up, please.
Yeah.
Now, would we be just getting comments from ag, or would they come before us to discuss this?
It depends, we'll see what their, thoughts are. Yeah. I mean,
How often do they meet? Once a month?
once a month. Yep. First Monday of the month,
That's the next.
next month. Yep.
Do we have plans to send this to the town attorney, not the town attorney, land use attorney?
I would do it after we get all the
After
comments,
we
to,
resolve
get it buttoned up and then, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay, on the CBIG, I have not had a chance to talk to Mr. Kasner about setting up a time for that.
I thought that was set. No,
That was January, February sixth.
February 6th.
That is for Town Street.
That's for Town Street.
Oh,
This is for Mudas.
Oh, this is the move.
okay.
Different.
So I can wait until 6th.
The zone's different.
Yeah.
Oh,
The whole
okay.
commission's going for the 6th.
Oh,
Okay. I guess that might be a good time for us to sit down and discuss, pick out a good time. So, okay, CEO report?
For some reason, people think that it's probably a nice idea to ignore me, so, yeah, just, when you knock on the door and the dog comes down and they run away, so unfortunately, it's gone from a level of, ask him to give me a phone call. There's quite a few junk violations, a lot, to say the least. That, go to the next step, which is certified mails, and after that, it's,
Who's this for?
there's quite a few. I could give you a list.
Okay.
I-
Yeah,
I-
why don't you?
Are
We've
these
done that
people,
before.
people that are living there in your, or seasonal places?
Yeah, it's amazing, yeah.
Oh, is this seasonal living, or is this?
No, seasonal living, actually, I gotta say, most of the notice of violation I got to seasonal living, people responded to me.
Okay.
And some of them have a way to actually buy additional property or convert from seasonal to year-round properly with proper septic systems and all that. So a good portion of those are working on that.
But you're
to get
talking
that.
about hoarding right now.
Yeah, but now, at the same time, the winter time is a good time. You can see right through everything, and we have a handful of them. Some have gone past maintenance to problems. I'm working on them too. It amazes me. It
You hear
amazes
this-
me when you send a
You hear this
certified
from your
letter.
neighbors? Is that what cues you?
Sometimes from the neighbors, sometimes it's like, gee, I wonder why there's a junk vehicle parked at the end of the driveway. Why don't, and then you look over the ridge and you go, that's why. Yeah, it's a combination. Yeah.
Now, are these things that are normally hidden during the summertime?
No, vegetation does a wonderful job, Tree growth, keeps things going, but some of it's just grown. And then it's amazing what people think are valuable.
Deb, did you want to drop those off? I'm sorry, I didn't even see you sitting there.
Okay. I can wait till you,
That's all right, you can drop them off, because I'm sure you have other things you want to do.
yours are just for your public hearing that were delivered to me earlier.
Oh, okay.
I won't-
Sorry
All right.
about that. Yep.
So are these things that are like behind a person's house that you can see them because there's no leaves, or is it?
No, these are things that you can see sometimes plainly from the road, or you drive down the neighbor's driveway and it's right there. It's a combination. Yeah, it's not like it's hidden behind the house. No, it's pretty evident. And a lot of it comes down to is that everybody seems to make the mistake that will just avoid the letter, then the certified letter, and they refuse to accept it. They don't answer the phone because everybody and their brother's got caller ID. I think the next one is Valentine's to send it out in a red letter.
You can hide your number, you know.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that.
I guess you would know that.
Yes, I do.
So, I think, you know,
Hang up phone calls?
so if you get a red letter and, you know, it might be, you know,
Now, let me ask you this, this has been an ongoing issue with us for several
Yeah.
years, as long as I've been on the board. Do
it's,
you see a larger trend, a smaller trend, or is it undulating?
it does this. It does this. It does. And so,
Is it pretty much the same offenders, or?
no, we get new ones. And some of the old ones pop back again. It's a maintenance thing.
Do we have no teeth to do anything?
Oh, no, the teeth are ugly.
No, we do.
I mean, you got plenty of teeth, but you really don't want to go to that route of, okay, now we're going to go to court. Now we're going to remove it at their expense. Then we're going to lien the property to get our finances back. This isn't, and unfortunately, it's not a case of they violate because, you know, they're just saying go jump in the lake. Half of this has to do with people who have issues of inability to let go.
Would a blight ordinance help with that?
Well, this
Would
part
it
is
help-
under
help us
ours.
skip some of those
No,
Those
no,
are
it
under
actually
us.
doesn't.
hurdles?
No, what the blight ordinance does, then allows you to come in and sit down and negotiate with, you know, someone from the Board of Selectmen who's appointed. You have a hearing. I'm more than willing to talk and work out a schedule with anybody. I've had some people who literally tell me, well, I got a little better and they cleaned out 5 square feet once a month. That's improvement. It's better than nothing. And then others that, like, what happened? Some are more than willing to, you know, talk to me, but the real problem is when they just tuck and hide. I mean, it's just complete, you know, knock on the door, leave a card, do all that stuff, and then, you know, then you're eventually saying, okay, hire a sheriff and find this person. You know, which I don't want to go that route. That's, you know,
Expensive.
I'm more than willing to sit down and say, let's work out a schedule. You know, and then I've got a few that I pop in and go, how you doing? And, you know, they're working on it. How about accelerating that work, you know? Such a blast.
So make up a list, we've done that before.
Yep.
I remember we've had more than
Yep, oh yeah,
10 on it.
you know, yeah.
We'll address it. Anything else?
Oh, I did go to Plan of Conservation Development. I looked at the draft. It looked good. They, you know, they.
Oh, for the copy?
For the copy.
Yep.
So I told them to move forward and print it out, and they're gonna call me when it's ready.
Okay, and then we'll mail it off to the people who need it and
Yep.
pick it up.
Yeah, yeah. So that, you know, it was a nice job, clear, concise, you know, like you asked, you know, make sure.
This was the new printing
The
company?
new printing company in Farmington, yep. Yep, so that was good there. We also, reminder for those that signed up that might have forgot, we have a Thursday at 5 o'clock, we have a session right here on conducting meetings, and I always say that it's great to go because you get to hear other towns' horror stories. You know, things not to
Thursday
do
at
is
5.
usually, yeah.
Okay. That's enough for
We have quite a few that signed up from a lot of commissions, planning and zoning.
Any
See.
from Gateway?
No,
I didn't think so. You sent it though to Torrance?
I've gotta check and see my email.
Because he never, it wasn't mentioned at
Yeah.
last week's meeting.
Yeah, let me see about. Anyway. Okay.
Jim, I know I brought this up before, but is there anything we can do about the gas station across from Dutch Propane? In terms of getting them to take that building down, or?
No, there's a case where they haven't gone, to my understanding, the final step of remediating the property so they can transfer it, sell it, do something with it. So there's that
They have the
underground.
ability to take the building down, right? They don't need to, I'm not asking them to clean
Right.
the
So-
soil.
We talked about the last month, and I've looked it over, is that we did bring before a blight ordinance. The blight ordinance, you know, failed at a town meeting. And maybe one of the ways to approach it so it doesn't cover all the things that zoning already does in a way of trash and metal and things like that, is to go to a demolition by neglect of structures. Then maybe we could bring that up as a separate issue, so I was trying to craft that also.
As an
That we could-
ordinance? or-
As an ordinance. So then you could say, okay, if you've sat on this building for X amount of years, nothing's happened, it's falling apart as it decreases the value of the neighborhood.
That's been empty for 20 years.
Probably,
There's a gas station when I moved in.
Was it?
yeah,
Okay.
seems like
Been at
forever.
least 10 years though, this
Yeah.
penalty. Because I've been up on Smith Road for 10 years.
So maybe that's an option to bring in, I'll run it by
I
the
mean, it must be
selectmen.
unsafe at this point. Couldn't the building inspector go in and deem it unsafe? And
If it's secured and locked and you can't get in it, then that's about after that, that's his
Really?
authority. It has to be listing, it has to be really bad,
Really?
yeah,
It's a brick building, so.
Yeah.
yeah.
What is it, all the windows are broken out in the
The
front?
company could afford to do it.
Oh, they have the resources,
Yeah, they could easily do it.
yeah. But they don't, they're not on it, and it's too bad, because there's been at least 50 people that have said, I'd like to buy that property, who do I contact to give them the contact, and they get nowhere with it. Everywhere from someone who wanted to repair lawnmowers to somebody who wanted to open a coffee shop to reopening a gas station, all of these things have come forward,
I
and
know Dutch wanted to go in there for his propane business.
propane business, yep, the
Yeah.
whole 9 yards. And
He had the money to make it nice too.
yeah, and they just let it languish, so maybe an ordinance of demolition by neglect will help that move along.
That comes down from the selectmen. not us.
Selectmen, but since I wrote the first part, I was gonna recraft it, cut the pieces that pertain to structures, and slide it over.
Yep, they're still working on all the ordinances.
Yeah.
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 Okay, anything else?
John, when you get to it.
I got something. I just want to ask what Scott brought up about 20 people being able to rent a place for 2 weeks with no hot water, no septic. Isn't that should be a zoning issue, shouldn't it?
It's more of a health district issue, and
Right.
it's also, gee, if I'm the person renting it, what am I doing renting a place? Their septic system
Paying
literally
for
is a tiny dry
I mean,
well.
I can see why they think
Structure.
it'd be like a camp for people
Yeah.
to have access to the lake. I can understand that. But from a health issue and from a common sense issue,
Unfortunately, it pops up here and there, and if you go online and read some of the Airbnb horror stories, people rent it out for 2 people, and then they, the classic is down in Niantic somewhere, and somebody rented out for 2 people. Didn't really do a background check. They were in their very early 20s, and the entire frat came down and destroyed the entire building. By the time the police got there to get them out, the building was trashed. And so
but
that,
wouldn't the zoning enforcement be able to go in and say this isn't safe, or the health department?
that'd have to be
Safe
more of
and
a
you
health
can
building
leave.
fire marshal.
Right.
Our zoning regulations and zoning cease and desist are slow and glacial. I hand you a cease and desist. You have 30 days under the statutes to respond. You can also appeal my decision, which would give you 65 days. All of these things going into it has to be a health, safety, and welfare thing where the fire marshal
Shut it right
would step in and
So Scott should have gone to the health department and the fire marshal. When he saw that.
yeah.
So that's not really an issue that planning and zoning.
And the problem is
Worry
that
about.
even then it happens, and then on next morning they're gone. They're here
He
today.
said it was 2 weeks, so,
Yeah, he never called me during the 2 weeks and
You know.
said there's 20 people. He called me after
right.
and said, I just put up with hell. And, you gotta actually call while the activity's going
You
on.
will make copies of that.
Oh, yeah, everybody's getting
Distribute it.
copies,
Why
yeah.
don't you put it on our agenda for next meeting?
Yep.
And we'll have a more in-depth.
What was
Look
that a
at it.
regulation for? That
See what
Scott
we
got?
I think this association,
Recommendations we can send out.
I think the association.
Basically,
Connecticut?
it's rentals,
More of a bite to
short-term
eat at.
rentals.
So we can send it out to the association. But as he said, it could be self-serving because most of the people in the association are the ones renting.
Well, then he loses. That's the thing, that's what democracy's about.
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah, we
one
don't
of
have
the
to change
things is
everything because somebody's upset.
we've had, you know, rentals obviously historically in the town for, since the start of cottages around the lakes.
Right.
You know, it's just that lately, common sense is thrown out the window and
Well, that's what
People
the
that-
HOA or their association should be dealing with, not us on a town-wide basis. Because that would restrict anybody that's doing the right thing, renting out their cottage for a week at a time. So,
well, most of the regulations that I've seen don't say you can't do it. But they do things like, you know, and I'm kind of curious, I'd like to see what Vermont has to say now that you mention it. They make you register, they make you demonstrate to the health district that you have capacity in your septic system to do it. So if you
well,
took
that's reasonable, yeah.
if you took a pre-existing cottage that's got a septic system that's 20 feet from the water, maybe the health district could say this isn't a great idea. I'm not sure, I'll have to coordinate that and see if they have any powers on that. Obviously, yeah, if you take a place that's got 2 bedrooms and you throw 20 people in it, well, it's gonna be a mess. Septic system wasn't designed for it anyways. So,
Well, let's look at it more in depth.
Sure.
Okay. So you had a question?
Yeah.
I need your name, please.
Joe Garofalo, 1 Pinehurst Lane. It's more inside baseball. When you have like your meetings, you get your packet. If there's a site plan to be approved that night, when you receive the site plan, that goes from lighting to shrubs, trees, whatever. Is the bonding in that, when you approve a site plan, does that have the bonding that's gonna be on what you're approving?
depends.
It depends. Some things don't have to be bonded.
You're talking about a huge
Who
one.
decides the bonding on a project? Town planner? I mean,
Depends on the cost, right?
The scale of
A bond estimate is usually prepared by the design engineer and reviewed by the engineer representing the town.
so you guys approve a site plan, no bonding is added after, it's part of your site plan, the bonding would be in there
We
at
would
that
make it a
point?
condition that a bond be posted. And then the value would be determined between the town representative and the representative of development.
Okay.
So as an
You have
engineer, I
final
will prepare an
approval on
estimate,
whatever it is.
but I don't typically do a bond estimate prior to approval. If I don't get approved, it's wasted work.
Okay.
Or.
I'm saying after approval, you approve the site plan.
So after, you know, so you come here with a site plan, right?
Right, that's what I'm
And
saying.
I'm a professional engineer, I've done this.
Okay.
So you come here with a site plan, and I have what I think is about a 70% drawing. The commission places other, you know, increase the landscaping, do this, do that, changes the value and the cost. Based upon the approved conditions, I can then, if required, produce an estimate of what that site work is going to be or that development's going to cost. I present that to a town. The town engineer or the designated engineer for the town will review and basically counter proposal. He'll come back with his own estimate and we can agree on, you know, typically I take his estimate, because they're usually close enough.
Right, but
And
that's
then-
voted on by you guys do the actual final.
Well, it usually goes for building. We've approved a bond, in, you know, upon approval of the town, basically.
Okay, and the second thing was, the last time we went to increase, and this is Banner Estates, not what's going on in zoning, what was previously approved. We received registered certified letters saying that there was gonna be this meeting for these 294 units or whatever was added on. Now, the zoning change went, which is a lot more than something that he had approval for to do. Shouldn't we have gotten a certified letter for a zoning change?
No, and here's the reason why. They're regulated under the statutes. So the statutes say that if you're going to do a proposal, site plan, special exception for a certain location, then it's for that activity for there, it's done. Since this regulation request or the review, that includes all of the area that's under a resort zone. So it doesn't specifically do. Now, if there's an application to do something at Banner, then the answer is yes.
But like the people on North Buddhist Road, they
Right.
might not have heard that this is going on, but
Correct.
might have had concerns about.
Correct, but
zoning change.
it's just the way the statute's written.
Okay.
It doesn't,
So
because
zoning
otherwise,
change doesn't,
zone change, it's published in the
Certified.
paper, it's published in the paper, but if a zone change had to give notice to everybody, we would have to give everybody in the
a mile
resort
radius or
zone,
something, right?
well, the resort zone and then everybody within the boundary of it. So it's only for a project that's being proposed, not a regulation change.
Okay. And on, staying on the, what he got approved for, was that a 3 or 5 year before he has to come before the committee? When does his time limit run out on what you approved the last time he came before you?
5 years.
It's 5 and then he can renew it, and after 10, then they have to come in front of us again.
Well, actually, with special exception review,
Yeah.
it's special exception review, it's
5?
3.
That's
3
what I
years.
thought.
They've changed it, and it was
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
Now, do you have the date when that was, did you email that to Catherine or something, so we have? And another thing was do you know what the bonding was on that? Cause that was a lot of work he's talking about doing up. I know it's held up with septic, but you approved the site, I was just wondering, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of earth movement, is there any?
I don't know what the amount was.
So here's the other part that comes to it, is that, as Rich said, you can come up with an estimate at the time, but the other way bonding also works is to have a certificate of occupancy issued. If something isn't done at that time, you can bond for the balance of it. So let's say it's the dead of the winter and landscaping is not finished, because it's frozen. Then you bond that balance of what's left over at that point.
I'm talking roads, sewers, stuff that the taxpayers of the town will be stuck with.
Right, but since it hadn't started and done, and since prices escalate so quick and so fast, sometimes don't collect the bond at the beginning. You collect the bond, and they say, well, I wanna open up these units. Well, the road and the landscaping isn't done. You bond that section out in pieces.
Okay, so in 3 years
Because-
he comes back, and if he's closer to where you could estimate like how much work is gonna be done, or.
In a master plan that's large like this, you'd take it
Right,
section by
I would think the whole
section.
commission, you live in a town, you
Yeah.
guys go to the churches, the grocery stores, you're gonna be the ones that
Yeah.
are gonna.
But you still would take it section by section, piece by piece.
Okay.
As where if it's a subdivision,
They had several phases.
several phases, yes.
Well, one doesn't get completed and another one's accepted, I just wanna make sure
Well,
that we're.
typically, you can start multiple phases, and you bond each phase.
Well, our roads are.
That's what I mean, I want stuff to get finished, you can bond out, but
One of the conditions on that approval is to do the top
One
course,
person
but
spoke
we
up,
were
you know,
allowing
about
him to do some construction, cause if he does top course right away, he's just gonna beat it up and leave you guys with a.
But you guys know, he'll leave one lot open, and then he says, I
No.
got one lot.
Well, I
can't
think
do the-"
that's if we get to a discussion of a new
I'm looking at
application.
Okay,
prior,
that,
Yeah,
that's
I think-
right
Right, you
now.
pretty much answered all my questions.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion for a 10-minute recess.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
Save my seat.
No, I know, that's, she was gonna go anywhere.
Started a long question.
Yeah. I know. Stay up here.
Yeah, you got it, I'll take it.
300 people with
What were the buttons?
No big Ys.
Well, did they win?
After 2 years, I got through. And then the big Ys built, I honestly thought about getting successful. Cause I'm walking out with plans, like I'm
Oh,
it's hard to.
better physically, psychologically, she's still anticipation. She had had emergency surgery, they found a mass in her.
I didn't get those minutes,
Which had to be
Didn't.
removed
So no one got them?
week before Thanksgiving.
Probably.
so.
Did you get the group email? Did you get a group email that I sent?
I don't think so.
Okay.
What's the email address you're using for me?
About a month or so.
Oh, I've got that construction one at Gmail.
Yeah.
Kurt, my wife is
CT. Then there's, the one that's my personal one, James Curtin 45, that one, which I don't know which one you use.
I think there's an M in it. Is it from Maureen or,
Oh, you may be sending it to her. Yeah, okay, no wonder. Okay, she probably has it. Maybe you didn't even mention it. 'Cause
I also have,
And I said, I had Joe go in there and go, okay, maybe it's went to spam or something. Try to find, but it didn't.
okay. You want me to send it to
Yeah, just send it
Curtin?
to me.
Curtin
The Curtin
Construction?
Construction CT at gmail.com. Yeah.
but it wasn't cancer, which is good news.
Right?
T.com. All right.
All right.
Oh, I'm thinking of it. I had no idea.
Huh.
Well, she, believe me, she would be upset that I'm even talking about it.
If I have a dead in the
I'm not gonna cancel.
association, is that not the town's property? That's not right.
What?
So the town won't touch a dead tree in an
I thought I had to
association?
dust off. I was looking at the
You
blight.
gotta call the association president, tell him what,
He's burning.
Get it done?
get it done, yeah.
Put it, yeah.
He's in Florida.
I have it on my computer, I printed it out, and I said, you know what, it's not gonna.
When I got here, there was
This is
no.
we have TV.
Oh, we don't.
We don't.
We go to court, it takes years.
They went back.
Yeah, they'll just spend tons of money to get a piece of worthless property made.
Right. Then you say, we're gonna take your property or take your money, and then all they got is property.
Yeah.
Well, we got a new regime, throw it to them. You know, you got, sooner or later it's gonna stick. I really do think we need a blight ordinance.
Back because you know, the libertarian point of view in town. You know, I don't want anybody telling me how high my grass has to be if I have a broken window. And you know, Emmett, he was a big.
Well, including my son's now 5. He was. That's why I figured he's gone now, so.
Yeah, we're not gonna change the order.
Good.
Okay, seeing it's 8 o'clock, we're gonna start the public hearing section of our meeting. If I could have everyone's attention, please, and quiet. East Haddam Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 28, 2020, at 8 a.m. at the Municipal Office Complex Meeting Room. What's that? PM, sorry. Meeting room, number 1 and 2, 1 Plains Road, Moodus, Connecticut, to hear the following. A, continued, proposed amendment change to the floating zone regulations for the planned recreational development resort zone. Proposal is to allow more than 4 units in a building that exists prior to the floating zone application. At this hearing, interested persons shall be heard and correspondence received. Jim, do we have any more correspondence?
Well, we have more correspondence. I don't know if you want to just give me an update of what was submitted.
Yes.
For the record. So everybody was given the package from what was submitted last month. Overview of Banner Country Club Estates. I also handed out a package with the entire resort zone outlined, GIS, and the main buildings for Banner, my father's house, Cave Hill Camp, Clark Crest, and the 4-H camp. And in between, which I'm gonna hand out now, is kind of an overview from last month. I didn't make 1,000 copies, so I'll.
what you said,
Yep,
emailed over.
Yep.
Okay,
so I'll go through it. One of the comments at the last public hearing was the confusion about, does this regulation pertain to when somebody applied for the floating zone or when the regulation was created in 1973? And I thought that, you know what, we're talking about preserving existing buildings and historic structures, and not if somebody comes down the road today and builds a 10,000 square foot building for a horse barn and then applies for a floating zone 10 years down the road. So my recommendation, staff recommendation, would be for, where it is in red, the creation of a floating zone in 1973. So it only pertains to structures that existed at the time of the floating zone creation, and that's in there several places for it. The other comment was, that was brought from the floor, was the consistency with the plan of conservation development section and section 8-2 of the statutes. I've printed this out for your review. I don't know if you want me to go through, I'll go through part of it. But in our plan of conservation development, there are several sections that talk about housing options and how the town encourages affordable, diverse housing opportunities to meet the needs of all residents, regardless age and income, while ensuring the preservation of East Haddam's small town and rural character is sustained. And part of that report from the Plan of Conservation, which we just approved, according to the townwide community survey, many responded in belief that the town needs smaller size housing options, including townhomes, condominiums, small rental units, and accessory apartments. Also, the state of Connecticut has us as part of it is reaching the affordable housing and availability. The state of Connecticut requires the issue of affordable housing be addressed in each community's plan of conservation and development. And if you read below, while East Haddam is not likely to reach the 10% threshold of Affordable Housing Appeal Act in the near future because of sheer numbers of newer converted units that we required, East Haddam can, in a planned manner, increase the percentage of affordable housing units and work towards meeting the state goals. Recommended include requiring a minimum of 10% affordable housing and multifamily housing, providing for greater variety of options of mixed-use development areas, and expanding accessible affordable housing suitable for retirees and the elderly. So those are, even if you go through the full plan of conservation development, it's mentioned many times. And then I just, for the, it's Connecticut General Statutes 8-2, which is the enabling language for zoning regulations. And I highlighted in yellow and bolded, you know, you are allowed to create cluster house development. You are regulate the reconstruction or alteration of use of buildings. It clearly says you have the right to do that only after obtaining special permit or special exception. And you shall consider the plan of conservation development and any regulation change. Whole section on the view of conserving the values of buildings. And such regulations shall also encourage the development of housing opportunities. So that was, you know, it's all there for your review and consideration. When it came to what structures did this apply to in the resort zone, Jim kind of nudged me and questioned about one of the other buildings. So when you look at Banner Country Club, just based on existing structures and what's there, the Country Club building, this is all off the assessor's card, so it might not be 100% correct, but it's close. The Country Club building, the first floor is 13,948 square feet, and there's a full basement under it, so I'd double it to 27,896. The maintenance building down below, that was what was questioned, the maintenance building down below by Mirror Pond is 6,144 square feet. My father's house down the road on North Moodus Road, the main building is 9,002 square feet. The church, I didn't think, and I also included buildings that may be more than 4 units, because we are discussing that too, as a possible regulation change. The church, which is a former pool house, is 4,080 square feet. The two-story barn building out back is 3,876 square feet. The colonial building up front, a lot bigger than I thought, 3,058 square feet. Clark Crest Realty, the main building that runs that length, the front section 6,000, and the warehouse back, the footprint is 4,000, so it's 10,434 square feet. Cave Hill Resort, their main building is 2,928 square feet, and the 4-H camp, which surprised me, the main building was 3,000, and that's a typo. It was 3,300. There's an extra 3 there, 3,375 square feet. So it doesn't just apply to one spot in the zone, even though they don't have a floating zone designation now. Being in the resort zone, they could always apply in the future. So, when asked as to what it pertained to. And then the rest, I just highlighted out some of the readaptive use that was pointed out by Mr. Hendren, but the rest is just the existing regulation as it sits now. And then you asked if I did have correspondence. I do.
Yes.
Okay, so one of these just handed by Deb Danette. To whom may concern, I am not able to make the January 28th meeting, but have made aware of the petition to change zone regarding the Banner Lodge area apartments. I do not believe it's the best interest of our town who are already living in the area to approve zone change at this time. Thank you for your time and consideration. Kim Sinai, 148 East Haddam, Colchester Turnpike, Ludus. Next one is to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we have taken notice of the Planning and Zoning hearing with regard to making changes to section 17.54 and 17.56 of our town zoning regulations. We have several concerns regarding the possible of change being made to the floating zone regulation for resort areas of the town. It is our impression that the proposed planning and zoning changes are in response to a petition by the Banner property owners to allow for the installation of affordable housing units in the current club housing building on that property. It is unclear to us whether the change or exemption that the Banner Enterprise is seeking will result in regulation change that other resort property owners could capitalize on as well. Regardless of whether the changes in the regulation solely benefit Banner Lodge Enterprise or the change could extend to other properties in town, we are not with agreeing of the expansion of the current regulation due to the erosion of the property values that it could occur. It is our assumption the current regulations that govern resort properties are in place to protect the historic feel of our town, a clear focus of the stated goals of both the current and past conservation and development plans, as well as to protect the property values and town residents. It is our understanding correct that current zoning allows for units as small as 450 square feet with a maximum of 4 units in any individual building with no more than 8 units per acre. Yep.
I see people that they're saying they can't hear you.
Oh. Wait. It's on.
Make an effort. Okay.
All right. We are under the impression that the petition changes would allow for having no maximum on the number of units allowed per building and no maximum to the number of units per acre. If passed, it is our feeling these changes would set a dangerous precedent for development in our town of East Haddam. We have no problem with encouraging affordable housing in town, but with the construction of a multiplex apartment building truly an option for providing that affordability while maintaining a commitment to preserving the historic feel of our town. We feel that a serious double standard would also be created if apartment building owners have unrestricted unit allowance when private homeowners are held to the fairly strict restrictions on the number of permitted bedrooms under the pretense of environmental impact of septic, water, and use. And what about our town business restrictions? Will the town begin to allow apartment buildings to have restrictions on the chain and franchise business due to the desired maintain of our town historic character? Another factor to consider is the water table in area zone to allow for apartment buildings. Already there's a percentage of town residents who have wells that go dry during droughts. With the current water trends, droughts may become more common in Connecticut. Wow, it's 2 pages. Even all these factors aside, with very little research, it seems Banner Lodge Enterprise is already falling short of the fulfillment of contractual obligations to its investors and resident owners. Why should our town's governing bodies be allowed to company that has not fulfilled past promises of their property to continue to expand on the failure of the promises of both our town and current occupants of the houses and condos? Their marketing sign alone displays a promise that you have failed to meet. Resort living all year long, large outdoor heated pool, there's an outdoor pool but not heated. 10,000 square foot poolside plaza, concrete patio has not been well maintained. Spacious community center, the clubhouse and the gym are currently vacant and not available for use. There is no community center at all if it becomes home to apartments. Championship tennis courts not maintained and cracked, 6-acre lake and sandy beaches, does this exist? And hiking trails. Has it been established? Perhaps Banner Lodge Enterprise has an impeccable track record to date, and if their proposal did not directly negate one of the marketing promises of the provisions of the community center, our feeling this topic would be different. We feel there is some burden for a company to come good on past contracts before new provisions should be extended to them. Perhaps they have, rather than investing in the provision of affordable housing on a year-round resort property, Banner Lodge Enterprise put that money towards expanding opportunities from income on their properties as a well-maintained residence, amenities, and golf course. If we were Banner residents, we'd be very concerned about these proposed zoning changes. Indeed, as property owners in Greater Moose area, we are concerned. It is our hope that each member of the Planning and Zoning Commission would step in the shoes and the fellow folks who live at Banner and consider how they make these decisions if they live on the Manor property. Further, we hope that it will rest heavy on the minds of the making the zoning decision, the cost and benefits regarding to town taxes. It is true that Banner Lodge Enterprise and the resident owners on Banner property have applied for and received tax assessment reductions due to poor conditions of maintenance. And then it's time that we have a town that begins to hold the company responsible for their obligation and enforcement of regulations. They can see the property maintained to a standard rather than enabling them to degrade property values and leave it to town property taxpayers picking up the balance. Thank you for your consideration. Respectfully, Lance and Lenora McLean.
Okay, any comments, questions from the commission?
No?
Not right now, no? Okay. Okay, we'll open it to the public for questions directed to the commission. We're going to, again, it is only about the floating zone. It is not about any problems with Banner and the association. That is not what is in front of us. So let us remember that that is what it is.
Do you want to hear from the applicant first?
Oh, yeah. Does the applicant want to say something first before I open it to the public? I apologize. I forgot. I didn't even see him back there. Oh, here he is. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry.
That's why.
I'm looking at the other gentleman.
My name is Gary Hendren. I guess I'm quoted in the papers, which is nice. Thank you very much, Jim. Again, we are just talking about the bylaws, the regulation itself. And I think, again, what the intent to do is to preserve a building that has been noted is not in service right now. It's very obviously expensive to maintain. And seems like all we're asking for is the right to apply for something. This meeting is not going to give Banner or anybody else the right to do something, just the right to bring something forward and propose it. So I think that's an important distinction with what we're talking about tonight. And again, what has been quoted is talking about buildings that are, basically been sitting there for 40 years without use. And if, obviously, I'm sure a lot of you live there, so you've gone up and looked through the windows, you know what it looks like on the inside. And that is not a real good asset for the property. It's not a good asset for anything. It does cost money to maintain a building, and it might bring, again, some value back to the property versus having to sit there
Folks, keep your comments to yourself, please.
Having a building sit there and deteriorate certainly doesn't add value. So it is, again, just the privilege of coming and presenting a project, something permitted at this point. So please ask questions and I'm sure everyone's
Hold on a
familiar with
second, I wanted
Section
to-
17 at this point.
Please refrain from applause for things that you like. This is a public hearing. It's not a place to cheer everyone on. Please, I'm sorry, ma'am, I haven't opened it to the public yet. Okay, so, okay,
I
I'm
have a
sorry.
question for the applicant,
Sure.
if I may. So I did, for the record, I did listen to the tape, so I am up to speed and able to sit tonight. So we were presented tonight with 9 structures that your application would potentially impact. And one of the comments last month, or last meeting, 2 weeks ago, that I heard, which I thought was good, was, has there been an analysis over, given what you guys are proposing, how many apartments or units are we potentially looking at, given these 9 structures? If they all transfer over, is it 50, is it 20?
A very simple answer. In general, if you just go look at a building and someone says, I've got a 10,000 square foot building, how many units can I put in there? 15% of your floor plan goes to circulation between 2 staircases, doorways, exit, things like that. So you automatically knock out 15%, so you have 8,500 square feet left over. So on average, an apartment these days is averaging about 1,000 square feet.
But
So-
what you're asking for is less than 1,000 square feet on the minimum, right?
No, it's already there. The minute, that's already there. That's part of the existing reg.
So it could go down to 450.
It could.
That would be a studio. So, and again, if I walked in here and said, I want to do 65 studios over there, all these people would let me leave, and you'd probably shoot me also. So you look at the market, you look at the size, you look at the configuration of the building. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And again, just ballparking, 1,000 is the magic number to say. So if you added up all those square footages for all the buildings in the zone, potentially you could get, 20, maybe 22 in the big building at Banner, and that's the biggest one on the list. So how many people live in East Haddam? Would it matter if 44 more people lived in East Haddam?
Quiet. Folks, hey, please, keep your comments.
So I'm just saying,
It's directed to the commission.
I haven't addressed it to you yet, ma'am. He's not done.
anyway, from a percentage of population, it's a 1% growth or something. Because I don't really know the exact number of people who live in East Haddam. But anyway,
9,000.
if you just wanted to, again, do a rough estimate of what the impact would be, that's the formula I would suggest.
Okay. Anything else, Rich? No. Okay, I'll entertain questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
I need-
Sharon McClellan, 9 Pinehurst Lane. I have no problem with putting in affordable housing in this town, but affordable housing does not belong in a resort area, period.
Sir?
Doug Galford, 106 Cherry Swamp. Several years ago, I had to put my well down to 400 feet because I was one of the ones that dropped. My well would go out. I live about 300 yards behind Banner's driving range. Put all those units, my water table is going to drop. We were really concerned with the large section of the developments, phase 1, phase 2, with all the other large buildings. This is just going to exacerbate that whole issue. So I'm worried about water. And also transportation, roads, as it's stated in here. All that traffic, if it goes to Middletown, East Hampton, is going to come across Cherry Swamp. Cherry Swamp is a tiny little treasury road. It's one of the last ones that's plowed. It's narrow. You can't widen it. It took you how long to fix Neptune? So traffic's going to be an issue as well.
sir.
Joe Garofalo, One Pinehurst Lane. How many of those sites that you're talking about changes, how many of them have condominiums that people bought because the zoning the site plan you approved was a condo community? I didn't buy an apartment building, I bought a condo. Everybody out there did. It would be like you turn it on the Super Bowl and they say at the start of the game, Kansas City's got to score, got to get 20 yards for a first down, but San Fran only's got to get 10. You don't change the game in the middle when people have already invested. You know what those apartments will do to our property value, which is so low from where we bought as it is? That's something you definitely have to think about in a zoning change. You can't affect people that did the right thing, bought where you said this is what it was, and then you get up and you say, today we feel like expanding this. Well, you know what, the other places, 4-H camp, they probably don't have people that own condos there. They're probably little barracks or something. This is an established community. And that's all I'm saying, is just that, it just seems to be that, no matter what, it just goes through. I just don't get it. But that's all I got.
Yes, sir.
Along with what that gentleman just
I need
said,
your name for the record, please.
Bob Wheeler, 7 Pinehurst Lane.
Thank you.
The handout that Jim Ventris put together under 1723.11 on design, the language says the design of any zoning zone to protect indoor property values. It's pretty much what you just said. I don't see how much apartments can protect that property. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
What's that? I saw that. I didn't
Yeah.
say that.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
No, I'm sorry, the woman behind you.
Sorry, Cheryl Catholic, 20 Lenny Hill Road. The gentleman has mentioned several times that his concern is to preserve a large building. And I'm wondering, from what I understand, there's a lot of work going to finish with what he's already proposed. So how do we allow someone to skip over their obligations to complete a development and skip to the next step when you haven't done what you've already been assigned to do?
Well, that's not what's in front of us at this point, but if and when they came in front of us, they would have to address that before it could proceed.
Well, he keeps mentioning how he wants to preserve the building, and it seems like we're skipping a step, we're already forgetting about what they already have.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's not in front of us at this point. But like what I was saying, if it got to that next step, then then it could be addressed at that point, that certain things would have to be done before, possibly done before you could go on to doing more.
So are you saying then that if this is approved, then there would be stipulations that before he was able to build the apartments, that the rest of the property would have to be completed?
It could be on condition, yes.
Could be.
But this approval does not.
No, but this approval has nothing to do with
This
that.
approval has nothing to do with
That's down the
application
road.
for apartments.
I guess what
That
I'm
would be
saying
coming
is
in.
I feel like we're jumping ahead instead of addressing this issue.
Well, they're trying to see if they can do something else at this point. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Trish Tarnowski, 153 Leesville Road. My concern is with the dense housing. We're a rural community. I agree with affordable housing, but the flip side of that is we don't have the infrastructure to support affordable housing. We don't even have a grocery store. So to make it attractive for people to live here is a concern. And when we have cluster or dense housing, that really isn't the character of our community. And as I said, for people who want to live here, one of the points of living in a community is that community is supported. And I find that we have a hard time just supporting the community that we have. And it just seems almost scary if we're gonna have really bad. I live in the FAR zone. My husband Jim is part of Cable Camp. So I agree with the resort. I don't think this was ever set up to be dense housing. It had its heyday. It had its point in our community. I agree that we have to have growth. I don't think this is reasonable.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Just so clarification, the density for any one of these properties is set, I think it was not allowed more than 8 units per acre. And in general, if you look at the town itself, it's 1 unit per acre. So we're not talking about increasing, let's say if you took a 6,000 square foot building and put 6 units into it, that 6 units gets deducted from the overall plan. So you're not increasing the density of the town. You're just clustering those 6 units onto one spot.
So like, maybe,
Does that understand that?
maybe I could clarify it even better. The regulation as it's written is 1 unit per buildable acre,
Right.
which in your, which for Banner, when they applied, just as an example, there's over 400 acres, but only 333 are buildable. So the formula is written out that way. So in anybody who applies for the floating zone, they have to apply that formula. And it was designed that way so it would replicate the 1 acre zoning. So the number of units for a plot of land didn't increase. It just allowed for cluster capabilities and then leave the balance of the land in its some other state, whether it's recreational golf course, farm, forest, open space. So the density of a 1 acre zone doesn't increase, just like Fox Hop Yard. Fox Hop Yard's in the 2 acre zone. They had to apply under that formula, 2 and 4 actually. And so out of, when they came to us for floating zone, they had 180, so basically they had 460 acres total. Under the regulation, the way we wrote it for that area, they were allowed a maximum of 53 units. So the density of the town under a floating zone doesn't increase. It just gets put in a different building configuration.
I did have a question about the, last meeting we said they have to subtract those numbers of units from their total plan? So they'd have to modify their total plan to
Correct.
subtract?
They'd have to,
Buildings aren't they gonna use? Let's
they'd
say-
have to come and
assuming they were
identify.
gonna get something put into this.
They'd have to subtract from the master plan if it got to that stage.
The 86.
Three, no, the,
However many units they end up putting in.
what, the final master plan that was approved in 2016. They'd have to subtract from that.
So they're not getting more units. They'd have the same number total.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir.
David Merrick, Banner Road. As somebody that grew up in a community for a small, well community, I know how smallest demand for water can adversely affect other homes in the area. I can say without equivocation that if you put that as a demand for water up there on Banner Road, people on the downhill side of it will be adversely affected. That being said, whatever recourse of action do we have, if my well goes dry, which it will have a serious impact on not only my well, others in the community.
We addressed that at the public hearing when they were coming forth, and I'd have to go into the records to see how it was, like, wasn't the water company?
Yeah.
Connecticut Water Company was in charge of that. They have to prove that they can get the water and maintain the water before they can really go out also, that and the septic, so.
And that was vetted very well in 2016 between the town's engineer, the state of Connecticut, and the applicant's engineers in the review process. So, and the out is if there was, the state of Connecticut could force them to extend lines, but it did, there was an extensive, and you can come in, I can dig out the information from that hearing, but there is, extend lines to adjacent properties.
I mean, hook us up to their service.
Yes.
That means we'd be responsible for pay dues. I'm not paying
No.
dues right now.
Well, I think we really shouldn't delve into that one
Right, we
because
have it all down if you want, if you'd like the
Just
specifications.
one follow-up, one other question. And is there a radius for that, or is it just writing a blank check for the entire borough of Hudas?
There was a radius.
there was a radius and I'd have to go back in the record and look.
If you had been at the meet, were you at those meetings? It was,
He might not have owned, he didn't own it then.
I'm not doing the roads, so I don't get the letter of notification.
Okay.
I'm a zone resort.
right, okay. There's a gentleman over there, I thought? No, okay. You talked, I wanted to try and get some other people, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Alex Intrudo. I live at 15 Augusta Circle with my family, and I apologize, I'm not sure who this question would go to or not.
It always comes to us.
But why couldn't we just use the building for what I thought was originally intended for, it being some sort of banquet hall that could be rented out for proms for the high school or for weddings, there's vineyards very close by, and to actually maintain the property value and keep it looking nice, actually do something with it other than maybe housing, I don't know why.
That would be your question.
There has been a long-term search for a vendor to come in and do that, and it's been very unsuccessful. There's been catering companies, wedding companies. Unfortunately, right now, the wedding trend is going down rather than up.
Well, there's gonna be things that precedes themselves, so.
Sir, please.
So anyway, that has been attempted for many years to try to find someone to come in and take it as a hall. And actually, it was designed with additional utilities and heat and vents and things like that, so that it could be very easily converted into that. But there's just been no takers. But there has been a search going on for probably over 10 years to find someone to come in and rent that hall. Because way back, 12 years ago when I got involved in it, it was actually, there were drawings of it as a banquet hall, as a catered party hall. Now,
You've been trying to find someone for 10 years?
Ma'am, you can't just ask questions, please. They have to be directed to the commission.
It's for him.
I-
It's for him. He's got.
Right, you still have to have it directed to the commission.
Okay, so I'm directing it to you. Have you been trying for
Excuse
10
me,
years for that building?
excuse me. Can I have your name, please, for the record?
Catherine Emma Trudeau.
Thank you.
15 Augusta. Have you been trying to rent it for 10 years? And why would you be renting a building that's empty and unfinished? Is that what you've been presenting to your wedding planners? That's what I'm asking.
Thank you.
okay. Yes, we have been trying to rent it for 10 years. And what you do particularly is something called tenant improvements. You have to have a use. You don't go in there and say, oh gee, I'm gonna find a wedding planner and build it out completely as a wedding hall and not be able to find one. When there could have been a catering hall, there could be another use. So it's called shell building, so the outside was done, the new windows were put in, utilities were there, and when you find a tenant, you do a tenant improvement allowance, and you build it out to suit that tenant.
So no takers for this situation with an empty shell of a building for 10 years?
As following along that line, though, you're trying to rent a large building to a banquet facility, and you're bringing them up on an unfinished road past maintenance that we've been told is not up to par. If I'm going to sell my house, I'm going to paint it before I put it on the market.
Have you seen the outside of the building?
The outside of the building is beautiful, but it's still going up a road service that is not. Here's the bride coming up onto base course. I'm thinking twice about renting that facility.
Sir, gentleman in the back.
Bob Wheeler, 7 Pinehurst Lane. When you're talking about alternative uses that you've explored, why haven't you explored putting condominiums in there which would be compatible with the balance of the community?
Again, condominium, and when we say apartment, it can be a condominium. Condominium is a form of ownership. It can be a rental apartment or a condominium apartment. No one's ever said, at least I haven't said, and we haven't even been allowed to introduce the project yet, if you're talking about Banner. Whether it's going to be condominium ownership as smaller units. The word apartment, it means there are multiple units inside of one building.
I would have thought you'd have a better chance if you presented it as ownership in condominiums versus
I don't think
existing
there's
apartments, but
any, I don't think there's any adversity to say they're condominiums.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes, I have 2 questions.
just your name for the record again, please.
Michael Callahan,
Thank you.
41 Augusta Circle. I have 2 questions. First of all, the developer has owned the property since 2005, and he has done nothing with the banquet hall. It's sat vacant for 15 years.
And-
So the point is, he wants to let you believe that he wants to preserve it. Well, he's done nothing for 15 years, and it's fallen on hard times over the last 15 years. So I would be cautious about his idea of preserving. What has he done for the last 15 years?
Did you, can I answer that question?
Hold on a second, let's get to the second one first.
The second point I would like to make, according to the zoning regulations in town, section 2.7, completion of construction, it says for any special exception, site plan approval or variance, the construction of any building or structure, or the establishment of its use shall be completed by the applicant.
Okay, I'm gonna have to
Within-
stop you. What
within-
does this have to do with the current application for floating zone?
Because it goes against what Jim said.
I have to keep a narrow focus on the floating zone, people. How is this relating to what is in front of us at this point? I know you all have issues with the owners and stuff, but right now that is not in front of us. We can't do anything about that right now.
Let her finish reading the sentence.
It doesn't
Whose side are you
pertain.
on? Are you on the town side?
I'm on the board side. I have
Well,
certain,
the board works for the town, don't they?
but we have certain regulations, sir, that we have to abide by.
Let the man finish his sentence. Don't be so rude.
I'm not. You're rude in interrupting us, ma'am.
Oh my God.
Hey, Dad.
I'm trying.
I know.
I don't want it to get out of hand. That's the whole problem.
Legal restrictions that we have
Let's
here.
be civilized and let him finish the sentence. Yes.
I guess my point is, it's been over 36 months since the
Yes.
special exception was approved.
Yeah.
According to your regulations, that such approval, if it's not completed, shall be withdrawn. My question to you is, why haven't you withdrawn the special exception?
Hasn't been 36 months.
The special, we're at it, 2016. And that's a commission's discussion that they can bring up and do. So what you get out of it, because I've been here, we did this with the project that was Grove Street, we had them come in and reapply. They submitted the same information. They tried 3 times. Finally, the 4th time, he reapplied. Someone else bought the project, and it is now almost 100% complete with the 32 units. So what happens with a special exception, and you can withdraw it, but all the information, all the engineering, all the design, all of it sitting there. If this regulation was put through, my recommendation was to take the full plan, because they'd have to take areas out and come back and get it reapproved based on the entire site plan, because there'd be a change to that too. So that'd be the time to say, come on and bring your whole plan back in and redo it. So yes, we've done this before with other projects. Does it happen immediately in 36 months? No. Can't go anywhere with it anyways, so it's not like it's, automatically you pull the carpet out and say you're done. We stuck with the other one, which we approved. We modified when the regulations pertained to it came through, and now they finally have built it.
So you had a question?
I wanted to submit a copy of.
I need your name, please, for the record.
Sure, thanks. Joseph Busher from 51 Dolby Hill Road. I wanted to submit a copy of an appellate court case from 2009 that just sets out the standard, because the applicant made the statement that here we're just looking for the right to submit an application down the road. And I think it's important to note what this appellate court case says, that when you're acting now, you have a very broad standard of review, and you are acting in a legislative capacity. When you're facing a specific application that might be submitted down the road, you're then acting in an adjudicatory capacity. As a judge, you have a lot less discretion. As a legislator, you can take into consideration all the various things that are set out in section 8.2 of the statute and balance those, and there's really wide discretion. The court says, acting in a legislative capacity, the local board is free to amend or decline to amend regulations whenever time, experience, and responsible planning for contemporary or future conditions reasonably indicate the need to change. The discretion of the legislative body, because of its constituted role as a formulator of public policy, is much broader than that of an administrative board, which serves as a quasi-judicial function. The legislative discretion is wide and liberal and must not be disturbed by the courts unless the party aggrieved by the decision establishes that the commission acted arbitrarily or illegally. So it's important to note that you have to balance all these various factors now, but when you come to the next step, if this were ever to be approved, you would have a lot less discretion, and you'd be compelled to issue if they check all the various boxes. In terms of balancing all the factors, there was a packet that was distributed with various things highlighted, especially in section 8.2 of the statute. And I don't think, listening to what's been presented so far and having looked at the application itself, nothing addresses all the various things that have been highlighted here. No evidence has been presented by the applicant to establish that the proposal is in accordance with the comprehensive plan. I've not seen any argument from, or heard any argument, or seen any submissions from the applicant with regard to the comprehensive plan itself, and then the stuff that Mr. Ventris distributed leaves out, I think, Chapter 5 of the comprehensive plan that, to me, goes to one of the more important considerations of the plan, and that is ensuring the community's long-standing value of preserving the town's rural character. That's all of Chapter 5, and at the beginning of Chapter 5 on page 48, it notes that rural character was the top answer to the question of a public opinion survey done in 2018 as to what is the most important reason that you live in East Haddam. 69% of the respondents responded rural lifestyle is the #1 reason for living here. That wasn't quoted or mentioned in the stuff that was distributed. And I think that's a significant factor that you, as a legislative board, need to weigh when almost 70% of the residents here who were surveyed just a year and a half ago showed or responded rural character as the most important reason for being here. That weighs in favor of not approving this because it I think goes against the rural character of the community. Additionally, the applicant didn't address various other parts of the regulation. It says in section 8.2 of the statute that the regulations shall be designed to lessen congestion in the streets. We've had no evidence whatsoever from the applicant with regard to that. Ensure safety from fire, panic, flood, other dangers. No evidence or argument at all with regard to that. Promote health and general welfare. Again, no evidence, nothing. Provide for adequate light and air, nothing. Prevent overcrowding of land. It seems obvious that this would do the opposite of that. Avoid undue concentration of population and facilitate adequate provision for transportation, water, sewage, schools, parks, other public requirements. The evidence that came from the public questioning seems to go against all of those things here. But again, the applicant has come forward with no evidence to address any of that. So I don't see that the applicant has met its burden of establishing that the townwide zoning regulation should be amended. They haven't addressed the mandatory things that the commission shall take into consideration in considering a change to a zoning regulation. So given the record that the applicant has presented, I don't see a basis for going forward with the proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we getting a copy of that? I think you said you were going to give us one.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yes, in the back. I can't hear you, please. Did you get it, Tony?
I can get her name.
Hold on, she hasn't gotten your name, I have to have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm pretty new to the area, and so I don't know if you've done this, but I understand that we need to have a 10% of affordable housing in the community. What has the commission done to have master plans for that, so that we as citizens can see it and approve or not approve it, or make comments, and then this kind of proposal will either fit or not fit into a master plan of creating affordable housing in a rural community.
Huh? Under the plan of conservation development, we address it. One of the things that a lot of people don't understand, affordable housing is not low-income housing. Affordable housing is what I'm living in now. Affordable housing is what the fire department, the police, teachers, everybody else is living in. That's affordable housing. The problem with the way the statutes are written and the language that came down from the legislative is that affordable housing is supposed to be deed restricted. 10% deed restricted. We could never meet that criteria of deed restriction. We don't have big enough developments to come in to say that a percentage of them are. But we do have affordable housing. We have affordable housing in some of the smaller units we have. So we have a database of what we have for housing. But in the future, we're looking in that. It's one of the goals to look at. During a period of the 80s and 90s, we were moving so fast, we're having meetings till midnight because we're having subdivisions. Maybe back then, it would have been an opportunity to deed restrict the 10%. We're looking at those mechanisms as we move forward. But when you say affordable housing, it is not what everybody immediately thinks. It's not low income. It is, the average person going to work, affordable housing.
Okay, so we don't really need this in the. Right.
No, you actually do need, the biggest thing we have, and you can see this, I can use this as a discussion point, is that this Grove Street averages 900 square feet. That Grove Street has 32 units and they're almost full now. There wasn't even built last year and they're almost full. People are finding that, like most people, I don't need 3 or 4 bedrooms anymore. I need to get out, let some young kids buy my place, and let's move on. So smaller unit, whether it's a starter or an ender, that smaller unit is, and even Banner itself, the smallest unit is something like 1,040 square feet. The bigger units, there's a whole bunch of them that are 1,250 square feet. So we're not talking about units that are 5,000 or 6,000 square feet and then trying to do it. So but that's a discussion when it comes here.
Yeah, but why can't it be a multi-use unit? Why can't they have the same, the 4 or 8 units that are allowed and then use the rest of it for something else?
That would be a discussion that comes up if the regulation was approved. The part of the problem is that regulations are black and white. So right now, all of these resort units that have larger buildings, they have one option. It's under 6,000 square feet and it's 4 units per building. That's the only option available. So the request came, they have to consider the request. We're holding the public hearing, they're listening. And so.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm at Kelly James, 49 North Moodus Road. So I have a historic home and this would essentially be in my backyard. And I just think it's important to think, what do we as a town, do we want to be Mystic? Do we want to be Essex? East Hampton did this and it destroyed the lake. People like you guys voted to probably destroy the historic Buddhist center. You have to think about our town and what we want for it going forward. We have historic homes. This is going to plummet those values. Yeah, we can build condos, but is that what we want for our town? I think it's something to really consider because you can't go backwards.
I think I was 10 when Muda Center was done. So I don't think.
Detroit. It used to be nice vacation family, and now you can't even swim in it without getting an ear infection. What do you want to bring to the town? Yeah, you can fill the buildings, but is that what you want to fill them with?
Mr. Gelston.
Todd Gelston, 50 Bogle Road. I guess I'm gonna do a little bit. Make some comments and ask some questions. I'm a little bit confused, to tell you the truth. But first I want to say, this proposal that this hearing is all about is for something town-wide. It's not specific to the Banner development. Is that correct?
No. It's to the resort zone.
Resort zone.
I mean resort zone town-wide, all the resorts in town.
Right.
Okay.
5 properties.
Excuse me?
5 properties.
5 zones.
Just the resorts.
Right.
5 resorts. Okay, that's good to know. Now, you folks know Well, I firmly believe that the Planning and Zoning Commission is probably the most influential commission in the whole line of commissions in town. Board of Finance is important, yes, but you folks help set the future for the town of East Haddam. And one of your jobs, I believe, is to enable the maintenance or improvement of the town's assets. Now, I view the resorts in town as assets. I view open space, the rural character of this town, as a definite asset. Many towns don't have that. And I'm a little worried about making a regulation change that would make it easier for resorts to turn to high-density housing. Whether you call it affordable or low income, it's still high-density housing. So I'm a little nervous about that. I don't recommend that this proposal be passed as it is. And I'll tell you why. Affordable housing is important. So is low-income housing. People have a place to live. This is a country of a broad spectrum of people. But you need to put that kind of housing in a place that's a transportation center, because cars are getting more expensive, everything's gonna get more expensive. We all know about that. We all know about now, we're worried about CO2 and climate change. So the screw's gonna get tighter on transportation. So when you want to place affordable housing in town, you need to put it where transportation is gonna make sense, where grocery stores are gonna make sense. As far as locating on resorts, I think it's a pretty dumb idea. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. So I don't recommend it, whether Banner's involved or not. And so I ask you to contemplate your mission and how your decision is going to affect the town. I say town-wide, even though it's 5 resorts, it's still going to affect town-wide, all over the town, as well as future business for the town of East Haddam. The second thing I want to say is, as far as Banner, I got to tell you, I'm not a lawyer, but I think the ship has already sailed for Banner, because the first phase was reviewed by you folks, the public hearing was passed, correct? The second phase was reviewed and passed, correct? And the third phase was reviewed and passed. So that's a clear message to people who want to come to Banner and buy a home, because now they see the town has approved this grand plan. So I have a more secure feeling that I put my money into this building. I live here. This is my home for the rest of my life, however long they want to be here. And what we're doing, what you're contemplating tonight, is going to upset those plans. It's not fair. It's not fair, it's not practical, and it's not nice. So, and the developer, frankly, you folks probably know this better than I do, they have a responsibility. They were the applicant in earnest. You were the reviewing board in earnest. In earnest, you made a decision. I wasn't in favor of phase 3, but that's another story. But you made a decision, and now people have to live with it. The owners have to live with it, and the developer has to live with it. There's no easy outs in this business, in development. That's why it's high risk. So I think everything should be done to see the Banner development to completion as presented. Now, I know there's a number of issues. There's no septic system yet. I'm not so sure you're gonna get one either. You know, you folks know that because that's not even our decision, it's the state of Connecticut. The other thing I'm not sure about is water supply. Now, my memory isn't the greatest, but I remember I was concerned about that when the first phase and the second phase and third phase were proposed, and there was some water tests done on wells in the area. And what I remember talking to the engineer, that it wasn't clear if there was going to be enough water. And the only guarantee I got out of people is that Connecticut Water is going to take it over as a municipal water source, and if they have to, they'll truck water in. I'm not sure people want to buy into buildings where water has to be trucked in every day. So this whole Banner thing is, right now, very squishy to me. But getting back to the original purpose of this hearing tonight, and 2 weeks ago, is I'm concerned about the town. I'm concerned that we're not doing enough to maintain our resorts, because I think they have great potential. And I encourage you to think about the big picture. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name's Brenda McConnell. I own 5 Pinehurst Lane, Banner, and I just wanted to expand upon something else. When I bought my condo, I specifically bought into an upscale community. I had choices at the time, and I made the choice to buy into an upscale community. I have not yet, in the 9+ years, been able to enjoy that upscale community. So now to think that the town that I put faith in as well, to ensure that I was living in resort area, is thinking about changing that. It's very, very disconcerting for me. I just needed to share that.
Thank you. For the commission, we still have 2 other public hearings to go through. We've been on this for an hour. We can leave it open and continue it in February 11th. You have some information, you have some questions that you need to answer that they proposed, and they asked them. I'm going to ask you to answer them concerning.
We'll get you a copy of the minutes.
We'll get you the
Copy
copies.
of the minutes, so I know which ones I can answer
Yeah.
and not answer, because
And
I keep hearing all these specific questions, and we don't have a specific.
Haven't we heard enough from the public?
well, that's up to you. That's the other question. Have you heard enough? Have we heard enough? If we do that, then we can't hear from the applicant.
He has the right to answer these questions, but I mean,
He doesn't even know what the questions are at this point.
Well,
I think you can take staff comments, I mean, and we can go line by line through the questions of the minutes and break it out as a work group. They can do that as staff.
Take his answers after we close.
I don't really think there was a bunch that
He could answer.
he didn't already answer, to be honest with you.
That's fine.
I look at the historical aspect of this, and if there was a Gelston House there, or a Champion House, or this building that we were in tonight, it might be a consideration. But none of those buildings warrant, there's nothing historic about them.
I guess the question I have in front of you right now is, are we continuing this, or are we going to,
Close the public hearing.
I'd like to close it.
I'd like to close it too.
close it? Sue? What's your thoughts?
Okay, fine.
We have everything?
Close.
Okay.
I think we have as much as we're gonna get. Right.
Okay. Then you're
I
up.
can't see continuing it.
No, that's fine. That's why I'm asking the commission. Okay. Then I guess I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So, second.
You have a second?
Second.
Motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We will discuss this at our next meeting.
And I'll give you copies of what was handed in to you as part of your agenda schedule.
Correct.
When is next meeting?
2 weeks.
No, well, it's February 11th. It's a second Tuesday of the month. Okay, we have another hour to, we have 2 more.
Question on that, now, the 11th, this is closed, so you'll.
Well, no, I mean, it's open to the public.
But
there
no
won't be
comments. All the discussion will be at the table.
Right, and then you guys will vote on the 11th?
Possibly.
Maybe.
Possibly. We need to close by the 17th, right?
We need to
No,
close,
you
by the 17th, we have to close by.
Or we have to vote by 17th.
What's that?
No, our clock starts again.
Sure.
On your vote, do you vote based on public opinion or your own personal opinion?
Everything. Public opinion is very important.
We listen to everything and
We
then
do.
we make a decision the best we can, what we think is the best. Okay,
Yep.
that's all it is.
Okay, folks, if you want to have conversations, we have a meeting to take. Can you take it into the hallway? Please. Sorry, I didn't mean to go after that one woman. I saw you go, put your hands up. But,
No, I just,
you know.
I mean, I'm just saying.
I got sucked in.
I know, I'm just here for the sake we've been trying to market. I don't care. One, I don't care, but sit here and put you up to like, take a friggin' drive and then continue with that argument. It falls apart.
Well, that-
We're the whole reason why there's no business in town. Really?
Good job, Joe. Definitely a litigator.
Yeah, you can tell.
Joe Busher.
Joe Busher.
Everyone was out there. I mean, I
Nobody
never.
raised their hand. I looked for that. Nobody raised their hand.
So after the next meeting, this could be decided,
It might be decided at the next meeting.
It might be, it might not be.
Oh, no, it's gonna be decided either at the next meeting or the one thereafter, right away. I mean, there's nothing left. I would expect the next meeting.
We can always ask for an extension.
Actually, does it, you start a new clock now. You have you had the 35 days to hold a public hearing, you have 65 days to make a
Okay.
decision.
All right. Okay, folks, I have to continue. If you want to talk, take it outside, please.
Take it outside.
Okay, East Haddam Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 28, 2020 at 8 p.m. at the Municipal Office Complex, room 1 and 2, One Plains Road, Lewis, Connecticut, to hear the following. Section 8-24, review proposed permanent easement to Eversource Energy for the town of East Haddam, Roaring Brook Preserve, property off Clark Hill Road. At this hearing, interested person shall be heard and correspondence received.
I sit on the Conservation Commission, so I'm gonna recuse myself from this
Okay,
hearing.
we'll come get you. Thank you.
Wow, it's not controversial, is it? I don't know.
Okay, Jim.
Okay, so, Eversource Energy came to the town for requests of, a permanent easement on the access way to the power lines on the Roaring Brook Preserve, which is owned by the town. They presently have a temporary easement and they're looking for a permanent easement. And if you flip to the colored map, one of in the yellow is the area that they're looking, it's an existing pathway now. The reason they wanna use that is they don't wanna cross the streams on either side, to get it, and have wetland impacts. And I think the Conservation Commission has a report, you guys, did that go to them for discussion? 'Cause-
They've discussed it, and, see, that goes back a couple months, I guess I can still comment on that, and they're still chair that. As of right now, they're not in favor of a permanent easement.
Now,
Okay.
is this a section, did they, install like a process road that recently to do it? So you've got like a road in there, right now?
And this is just an
Do they
access
plan to
easement?
widen that existing road?
Just an access easement?
Yeah.
There's a road right here, but they have to. cross
Yeah,
the
no,
road.
no, I get that, yeah.
That's,
So, can we ask why the Conservation Development's against?
It basically eliminates any constraints for control of what they're doing on the property. They can just come and go as they please.
So you want them to ask when they need to get in there?
Yeah, because they've done a lot of work that also we felt was negative to the environment and and some of the work we'd already done there.
You mean that highway in there, you didn't care for that?
Well, we weren't happy about that. That was actually done prior. There was that goes back many, many years, that highway, so to speak. They did improve it 3 years ago, before the Conservation Commission was actually doing anything with it, right after the town acquired it. And they've been, obviously maintaining that for, using that access point for, probably the length of time that their right of way has been there. When it was owned by the, who was previous owner? 2 owners ago, 3 owners.
Zeiler.
Zeiler, and before Zeiler was,
Gallus,
Yeah.
way back.
yeah.
So,
So even if we approved it, you still have to approve it?
I would believe so.
Right.
And we'd have to, Board of Selectmen would have to, town vote, probably.
yeah, that's to get to the town vote, it needs our review because it's a transaction of land.
So does Conservation basically want Eversource to ask permission to access it?
Ask permission so we know what they're doing, so, rather than having a permanent commission where they can just come and go as they please.
Now, the current temporary easement, do they plan on doing anything else with that? Just stamping it permanent?
That would stay there, yes.
So they'd always have access to it, whether it's temporary or permanent, they
Yeah,
just
we're
have to
u-
ask you first.
We can utilize it too, to
Right.
get to it. It's entirely on the town's property.
Right.
The right of way through that whole section is on town property, the road is entirely on the town property.
So this becomes part of your walking trails and
That's
then,
exactly what it's used for now, part of it, yeah.
Is there any financial benefit to the town for a permanent easement?
$5,000 that they would give us.
Well, that's what they offered.
They offered.
It's up to the Board of Selectmen to negotiate.
I mean, that's what they offered.
If the easement goes permanent, it still could be used as a walking trail, correct? They don't,
Yeah.
they're not taking control.
They're not taking control, it'd just be a permanent easement, but control that the town or the conservation commission likes so that we know exactly what they're going to do. Right now, they've been coming and going pretty much as they please. Part of their, line upgrades where we have very little to say about it too. They authorize or they put in all the gravel in there without our knowledge actually doing that. Now, there may have been some trade-off early on because they did put a parking area in there, but, again, some of this work was happening before the town was actively involved with maintaining it and, putting trails in, et cetera.
Is there any other property that Eversource owns in town that we might be able to get access to as a trade-off for giving them any
They
access?
don't own very much property, most of it they have right of ways. I only know one other piece of property that they own, there may be more, maybe Jim is aware of it, but, they own a piece that's off of Orchard Road through wetlands, that comes south from Orchard Road. North of Orchard Road, that goes on Pa's property, but,
They tend to be pretty restrictive of their right of ways too.
yeah.
what are the parameters of our review though, based on this? I mean, what do we have to look at here? It's already in.
Well, that's, yeah. I mean,
The
it's.
road is there.
The road's there.
There's a porous, 2-inch trap rock on most of it, which is not very pleasant to walk on.
That's not walking.
And, they've got a couple, leaf offs put in on it. They did do some work to improve it, and it goes up and over the hill. It can't come from the east, I guess the east side, because they would have to cross the wetland, so they're using this as their primary, access. They have a pole right on top of the hill, which goes to a set of poles on the far side, on the east side of, Florida Road, on another high hill. Then a set of poles that crosses over, goes over the brook and over Park Hill to up towards Fiala's on top of Mill Road. So probably 1,000-foot, 1,500-foot run.
Can we condition a permanent easement?
You could also kick the can down the road and let the Board of Selectmen condition a permanent easement to incorporate the wishes of the Conservation Commission.
That
Because
sounds
we
like
don't
a
really
really
get
good
involved
idea.
in the negotiation of language.
I remember ever doing
Well, I'm
this.
wondering if you can do a permanent easement, but you have to alert the property owner of what's.
Well, that's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
So just as an aside, we've had a number of problems with them both here and also on our property over on, the open space property off of Hannigan Road, where they did extensive work, where they had cliffs that we finally, if you remember back 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
Where we had to, select and Lyman, upon the Conservation Commission's complaint, made them put in, barriers so cars couldn't just drive off the cliff, because you couldn't tell where, that particular portion of Shanigan Road went. It actually appeared to go off down the power lines, and if you didn't know where you were going and it was foggy, you could literally drive over a 30 or 40-foot cliff, that they had put in as a pad for their towers. So, and the biggest problem the Conservation Commission has had, and most private landowners have had, where they have gates on the property to keep out ATVs and stuff, and our locks were constantly being cut off by Northeast Utilities or broken off or whatever, so they could open the gates. Where they had their own locks there, but and it's just easier for them to destroy a lock so they could get access.
Well, I guess my
Very
question
frustrating. Do you think it's gonna be any different whether we give them permanent or temporary
Well,
easement?
I think they felt, you know, again, they're dealing with many contractors that are working on these, and the contractors would change month to month. I mean, one contractor would come in and replace the poles and, Tower 1123, and then, 6 months later, a different contractor would come in and replace poles on 1124. I mean, it was just crazy, and then they came through and did vegetation management where they just, I mean, trees that were 40, 50 feet below the power lines of Cedar Grove was just clear cut. So, on our property, and no one even asked us permission for that or anything, so, on the town property. So, there's been a number of issues with Eversource and its partners on these transmission lines.
So basically, we could just not grant the permanent easement.
That's a feeling of the conservation.
Good luck to them.
Right.
They can continue with their temporary.
I agree.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the commission? Open it to the public? Yes, ma'am.
Can we say something about what was said earlier, about the Airbnb?
No. Oh, not at this point. We're in a public hearing for something totally different, ma'am. Okay, seeing there's no questions, do we need any more information? Okay,
Motion closed, public
Second.
hearing.
I have a motion, I have a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a mind to make a proposal?
I'll make a motion, we deny the proposal for a permanent easement to Eversource Energy for the town of East Haddam, Roaring Brook Preserve property off Park Hill Road, based on comments from, the Conservation Commission. They can continue with their temporary easement.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Who seconded that? Susan.
I think we had a competition.
Okay. Susan did. Okay. There we go.
Bernie?
When we got Bernie, please? Thank
You know where you went?
You should be right in the hallway. Okay. Okay, East Haddam Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesdays, January 28, 2020 at 8 p.m. Municipal Office Complex Meeting Room, 1N2, 1 Plains Road. Move us to hear the following. New 19-14, 60 Smith Road, Smith Farm Gardens, Margaret Winkley, owner. Amendments to the approved special exception permit. At this meeting, interested persons shall be heard and correspondence received. Jim?
Do you have the green cards? Tell me you have those.
Green cards?
Certified mailing?
Gotta have it.
I have them.
I knew it. I was all right.
Anyone here receive a letter or sign a green card from?
Both back, there were 2 cards.
Yeah, it was Wildwood and yeah, they didn't have a lot.
Faxes these dated and
So there is an appeal period, and I can call those applicants and see if they received it.
Who's the other abutting property owner?
The other abutting, well, you have the across the street.
Craig,
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I handed you was the original approval from December of 2017. Then I also attached the request to the commission to expand. And
That letter's the current letter.
that's the current letter. And then lastly, I attached the annual report from 2018 and 2019, as they're supposed to do every January, of the number of events and how they were held. And I think I'll leave it to Mr. Winkley to make a presentation.
Amy, this kind of goes along with what I talked about, easier to follow on. Anybody else want?
This is from 17.
Okay, so.
Okay, so this is from,
We got approved in 2017, we were back here 2 years ago. And we got approved for X amount of events with a certain number of people. So we're kind of back at the table. Well, first I just want to say the last 2 years, as far as we know, have gone very well as far as the feedback we've gotten from the town, from the neighbors that we've talked to. A lot of the concerns that were raised, which you'll see I highlighted on here, were some of the initial concerns from the first meeting that was held. I can show you kind of how we addressed a lot of those issues, which I can get to in a little bit. But the purpose of what we're here for today is we wanted to ask for permission to increase the allotted number of events outdoors that had amplified music from what we had was 12 up to 25, and then also increase the guest count and have 6 tented events with up to 75 guests, and then 13 events with 13 events with 165 guests and 12 with 120 guests. So that's what we're asking for. So obviously, if you want to look at kind of the impact on how this would happen, I kind of broke it down into some numbers. So basically, you're looking at, I know, in a full year, if you looked at the total number of events that we have, it's basically less than 7% out of 365 days. So those events outdoors, 25 out of 365, we're talking about less than 7% of a full year is when we'd have an event. When we have these events, even if it's a wedding, the amount of time that the neighbors are even exposed to music, which I'm assuming is going to be the biggest concern that people are going to have, is approximately 2 hours. The first couple hours of a wedding, or you have a ceremony where you might have an unplugged violin player play. Neighbors aren't going to hear that. You have dinner going on where it's very, very quiet background music. The only time the DJ would turn the music up would be when people are going to be dancing, and that's for approximately 2 hours per event. So if you break that down, we're asking for 25 events for 2 hours of music. That equals 0.01% of our peak season, which is May through October. So 0.01% of the total hours that exist in those 6 months is what people would be exposed to in terms of some light background music. As far as any other issues, I kind of highlighted everything. People were worried about increasing traffic. We highly recommended shuttle service, which we use 75% of the time. We didn't notice any traffic on the street, any congestion, any issues like that. I know Wildwood had concerns about people pulling into their driveway. We have we put signage up for every event. We have a personal golf cart right at the entrance to make sure people pull in the right driveway and don't go down Wildwood. In addition, Wildwood has signs that say private property, so it wouldn't really make sense that people wouldn't drive down there anyway. People were concerned about wild parties and music festivals. We haven't had one music festival in the 2 years. No issues with out of control parties. The police were never involved in any kind of events. There's never anything out of control like that. I kind of addressed the music. Just kind of circling back to that, I bought a decibel meter, a reader, and I would, during the events, go to the property lines and measure what the decibel reading would be and made sure it stayed at the 55, which was, you guys said we had to abide by. And if it ever did go over, I wouldn't go down until the DJ gets turned down. Whenever we did run into neighbors, we always asked for their feedback. They asked, how's the music? I would give my cell phone number out. I'd be more than happy to try to accommodate neighbors that had any concerns, such as that. As far as why I think it would be good for the town to increase the events and have this venue kind of continue is, I think it kind of puts East Haddam on the map in a way. It's a really unique property that I think people really appreciate, and it brings in a lot of people that have never been to East Haddam before. You get 100 people that come to this wedding, maybe 75 have never even been to the town before. Now they're seeing the village and kind of see what the town has to offer, and maybe they buy a house here in the future. Lastly, why we, my mom and I, as a family, kind of want to continue this is we have extremely high property tax bill, $12,000 a year. The maintenance involved in this house, we're talking about a 5,000 square foot house with massive grounds. It's the numbers are, it's astronomical. So in order to maintain the property, pay the taxes, we need to generate revenue. My father passed away 2 years ago, and he was the main source of income for the family. And you know, to be honest, if we can't increase the events and have this continue, we probably have to sell the property, or you know, we just won't be able to continue. And lastly, there's also programs that run on the property right now. We work with developmentally disabled adults, and there's several different programs that run. The landscaping program. There's an organic garden where they harvest vegetables. They have a cart down at the bottom of the driveway. They process cord wood that they sell to the community. So there's all sorts of different things that are operating on the farm that if we had to sell it would obviously disappear as well.
You covered it.
That's all I got. I'm happy to answer questions. But.
We have fun. We have fun, and a lot of people who come, we've gotten tremendous feedback. We've gotten like 5 stars, and people, you know, people have a really good time there. We try our best. We want to be good. Excuse me. We want to be good neighbors as well, and try to do that. Try to answer any issues, concerns, and if there's any others, we'll see what we can do to address those. Any other issues? These are the ones that were initially brought up, that Travis mentioned, and we feel that we've addressed those, but if there's anything else, we'll do our best to address any other ones.
Jim, do you have any correspondence or anything?
I have no correspondence.
Questions from the commission?
Yeah, I have a couple. Have there been any complaints last year?
0.
My next question is, 25 out of 365 days. It's really only the weekends I think we're talking about.
Well, it's also the weekends and the peak season. It's about every weekend.
Right, so I'm looking at the decibel level is only good on weekends. So that takes that 365 days and reduces it to a much smaller number. Available time to run music till 10 p.m.
Correct, yeah. We wouldn't have an event during the week where there was music, right?
You only are, I'm sorry, you done?
Yeah,
You're committing to one event in the tent the weekend.
That's all we do.
I drive by, I go home Smith Road every night.
Yeah.
Now, I was thrilled to see the work you've done. I think it's you're doing a real nice job, and I'm happy to see the tents up. But I haven't seen one in a couple of months. So, saying 7% is a little disingenuous.
Well, that's just in the course of a year. Yeah, of course, it's more condensed within peak
so,
season.
And I did the math when you mentioned your peak period, and it is. It's going to turn out to be one weekend.
Probably May through
So,
October.
if it's one wedding a weekend, I guess we'll hear from the residents if that's acceptable, but not hearing any complaints in the past 2 years is encouraging.
Yeah, I could say I worked for Wildwood all year down there and dealt with all the members of their board. And that came up, your place, and they were happy with it. They thought it was doing well. I mean, I don't know what happens when it doubles or whatnot, but they had no issues. Music could not be heard. I was working down there nonstop.
Now,
Did a good job, so.
this increase you asked for, is that essential to your business plan to keep this place?
Yeah, I mean, the 12 was great to help.
Or it's just you're asking for a lot,
It's not
hoping
gonna
we'll
be
get-
sustainable going down the road to be able to, just, because the other events we do in the house are very small, they don't generate a lot of revenue. The weddings are where we make the money, that's where we need to capitalize, so.
Can I say something as out of knowledge, as someone who has to sit in the background and listen to a group that are planning for a wedding for a facility that only holds 100 damn people, it's maddening.
Right.
And it
That's a
doesn't
very small
work.
wedding.
It's a very small wedding, so by the time you finish with relatives and uncles and friends and all that stuff, it limits the business if you darn. And I've been barking at somebody about, now you're in trouble because which relative are you not inviting? Oops, so this is on the camera. So having the ability to have a larger venue is probably fits most wedding plans.
Well, that goes to my question. I did a little research, and the average wedding party is 150 to 160, and it seems like your focus is weddings. Correct. Have you been turning people away because You haven't had
Yeah,
that. Now,
people-
be honest.
Yeah, people have wanted to have larger weddings, said we can only hold, 125, so we have had to, yeah, turn people down, which has been a problem.
So I'm guessing you just get a bigger tent.
Right.
Okay.
Or another tip.
How's parking been? Any
Great,
issues
like I said, with the
parking?
shuttle service, like they come in with a lot of times it'll just be a school bus. They'll drop off, 40 people, and then I don't know, the average amount of cars is probably what, 35 or something?
Yeah, we can only fit so many there anyway, so
We just have a
that
little parking.
limits it, which is great, because we just say, hey, this is all we can fit.
What's your maximum amount of cars that you can fit there?
50, 60.
Yeah, I think we could do 60 is the most.
Yeah, we squeeze.
So if
We don't
everybody
wanna
came-
go into, we don't wanna infringe on the party.
So if there's 2 people per car, that would pretty much fill you up.
Exactly, right.
Right.
So when they bus them in, they're busing them in from the hotel, I'm assuming,
Right,
and
so
the
they'll-
wedding,
they're-
so it's
they'll
all
stay in a
part of the.
hotel in Saybrook
Yep.
Cromwell, bus in the wedding party and other people. Or a lot of people take Ubers,
I was gonna say, yeah.
because they don't wanna drive.
See, we need a hotel in town now.
Yeah.
Are you gonna start Ubering?
I do Uber all the time, just not in
Okay.
town.
Any other questions?
Your request is more than double of what you're currently permitted to do, and the number of attendees would increase appreciably. But based on your annual report, you don't seem to meet even your maximum 125 for any event. So the need to go to 165 is based on requests that you've had to turn away?
Right, yeah. The research that we've done shows that, like the gentleman said, 150 is usually an average wedding that someone have. We haven't had that many weddings yet. But going forward, I know that's usually the average number of what a wedding would be, so we're just trying to prepare for it.
We just don't wanna have to come back here again. It's kind of mask it,
I haven't been on your website. I'm assuming you have a website.
Yes, correct.
So the website will state how many people you could have at a wedding, so you don't know.
Leave it, I haven't, yeah,
Yeah, you wouldn't know who gets turned away just by looking at that.
Well, people email and ask.
Okay.
And you said you use a shuttle service for transportation for
It's not our
large
shuttle
events?
service, we recommend that they hire a shuttle service. We
Okay.
don't offer it.
All right.
Yeah.
So
But
we
then you
get-
have to worry about drinking and driving and all
It
that.
makes sense, yeah, I mean, it's most people, like I said, about 75% usually they've done that, just because it's a no-brainer, logistically makes sense.
I live right down the road, and I know when you guys end, I see some cars going by, but it's not appreciably.
Yeah, the other nice thing is it's like, not everyone leaves at the same time, so if a wedding goes at 10 o'clock, you're gonna have, some older people are gonna wanna leave earlier, so people leave 8:30, 9, 9:30, 10, 10:15, so it's scattered, it's not like you're gonna have 40 cars all leave at once. And
Right.
the roads it's not, yeah, the impact's really minimal.
You find it onerous coming to these meetings, or?
I enjoy it, it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
The reactions happen nonetheless. I'm not trying to do 40 units.
No, if we were to step it up just half of what you're.
Yeah, but we're flexible, I mean, no.
I think you're I think you're being reasonable.
Well, just because you create an upper limit doesn't mean they're gonna actually get that many either.
No, that's true.
Who knows what we'll have, it's just that we just wanna, like I said, we don't have to come back here another year and be like, can we get 3 more?
I'd much rather see a business succeed than us put a limit on it and have them not succeed.
Correct.
So,
I think,
Well, we are we would be opening the door to larger wedding venues.
well,
And then we could
that's-
test that water.
I think we look at what happened here, we actually thought at the first time the public hearing was held that there was going to be all these people here to support, and it happened to be the Wing Fest that had caused the thing, and if that didn't occur, we probably wouldn't have, I read the commission, we probably wouldn't have conditioned it as strictly as we did. So,
And the memory has faded now.
well, the fact of the
And then you
matter
have the
is that
sanctuary on top of that.
basically what Harvey said is perform for a little while, then come back and we'll see.
Yeah, we
And I
asked
think
them to
that's
establish a track record and they did.
And I think that's happened.
I enjoy listening to
And
music.
that's why the number, you know, I think the number was pretty low initially because we said, let's see how it goes.
Right.
That was always kind of the premise, and then that's why we're, you know.
You have to feel it out too.
Is 10 o'clock in the regulation for our upper limit?
10 o'clock is what
On the
the state of
weekends?
Connecticut recommends, because they don't have a noise ordinance anymore. They recommend in residential zones that 10 o'clock be the noise ordinance.
Yeah, it's
Is
clearly.
that on the Saturday or during the week also?
That's,
Friday to Sunday,
yeah.
Babies have to.
Well, actually,
outside and inside, well, their condition is 8 to 11.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll open it to the public for comments, questions and comments. You were raising your hand?
I was curious about.
I need your name for the record, please.
Sorry, Mary Maluski, 74 Smith Road. I'm curious about, when it needs to be a commercial zone, at what point?
So,
It's an agricultural.
so what we did is we,
Accessory use, right?
say that again?
It's accessory use, isn't it?
It's a yes. We had looked at our own facilities and some other towns and other places, and agricultural buildings. We made a determination a while back when we wrote the regulation that sometimes an agricultural building, and I think this came from Lyme, and they questioned us. They said, "Well, we want to have weddings on. This guy wants to have weddings on his farm to supplement the income." And my answer was, "Let him." Well, but it's a commercial. I said, well, is it really? And does it make a great setting? And does it does? So we have it in our regulation to allow these historic farm structures to be used as accessory use. So it is an approved use, just like we allow schools to be in residential zones, and we churches to be there. So all of those are high volume uses, but it is a permitted use under the regulations right now. If it was open all year round as a restaurant and then it'd be a commercial use. That'd be different.
Or if they were gonna construct a major building, a pavilion or something, that'd be different. But these are tents, they're all temporary, so that's how it was.
But it still has to maintain its component as a farm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Throughout this.
And they're pruning the fruit trees already. I saw them the other day.
And where is the maple syrup? Where's that being done, in the back there somewhere?
We have, there's trees all over property that are tapped, yeah.
Oh, you do, oh, okay.
But you know, we're not sure if we're gonna get the sap this year, you know, with the weather.
That's right, yeah.
It's not running.
Mr. Kasner?
I'd just like to say that from economic development, we awarded the farm, Smith Farm Economic Development of the Month. Just did a little honor, and they were very nice. They went up there and they showed us around the property and showed us the facility. It's a beautiful facility. They've done a wonderful job out there. It's a huge asset for the town of East Haddam. And to be able to have someplace for the weddings, this is one of our economic development areas of growth. It's something we can offer. Our environment opens the door, but we need a facility. And certainly the Winklers have a beautiful facility there. And I was very impressed with the whole operation, and the maintenance of that property out there is beyond. And so I hope that the board will look favorably upon giving them what they need, because I think that's an important thing. We don't want to restrict them. I mean, this will be the high end, but most of their weddings will be something other. But if they do have a wedding that they need the 150 people, we certainly don't want them turning those down. It's good for the town, it's good for our other businesses, and it has been a wonderful addition to the town. And I think that we hope that they will continue operating it, because it just couldn't be done any better. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Teresa Gilbert, 22 Mill Road. As a young person in town with not that many options of things to do in town, I know that some of the events they've had, like a farm to table dinner, has been something people in my late 20s, early 30s really appreciate being able to do in town and bring other young people. So I think it's important to bring people in that age
We'd love to
group
do more
into-
with the community, like I said, do more
Yeah.
farm to table dinners, not just weddings, other
Right,
fun
yeah,
stuff like
and
that.
there was like a herbal cocktail or like
Right,
an
in the
herbal,
house, yeah.
yeah, so working with a local business from Haddam,
So they're doing things that kind of people my age are really interested in doing that isn't necessarily offered in many other.
You know, us old people like to eat too.
I know. I'm just saying for us also.
And they'll send the golf cart over.
We can go together is what we're saying.
Rob?
Rob Smith, 119 Boardman Road, the evidence is right there. I echo the two previous speakers' comments on it. I've heard nothing but positive stuff about people who have attended, and it's been, I think it's a great attribute.
Just gonna say the same thing, I've driven by their place, I've seen their tents up, it's absolutely beautiful. This is the kind of business that we need to see more of in this town. Let's make use of some of our agricultural areas. They've done an absolute beautiful job. Let's see more maybe combined in with other town activities as well, maybe some other farms for farm-to-table dinners. But I just think it's a great idea to give them as much opportunity and embrace everything that they do. They've proven they've done a great job. Let's just support it. Carlene, I don't know if I said Carlene, please, 63 Dewberry Road.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Sue Cox from 12 Boardman Road, and I just want to say that I think it's a great thing for our town. I would like to feel like the town supports the businesses that we have here. I own an antique store. I don't think I've seen any of you there, but that's okay. But it would be nice if the town showed support for the people that do put in an investment, and I've heard great things about this, and we just need to support our businesses, all of them. So, thank you.
What antique store do you own?
It's really beautiful.
Boardman
Road in the
12
right
Boardman
hand.
Road.
Neat place.
Oh, okay.
I've been there.
Our last name.
Customary.
Yes, I've been there.
Okay.
You
Okay.
got something.
That's right.
Okay, any other comments from the? Mary?
Yeah, I'm going to dare to be the only dissent here, I'm sorry, and you are lovely neighbors, and we were really honored and we enjoyed visiting your property, and you have done a fantastic job with your events. I have to, I grew up on Big Shinley Cat, and, and just put on the record, okay? So it's not personal, it's just, I like my quiet. So I live on the property next to the Winkies house, seasonally. So they're at 60 Smith Road, I'm at 74, and part of Wildwood. My family and I rely heavily on the right to quiet enjoyment of this land. When I'm there, I expect to hear only natural sounds and silence. My property is seasonal, and to double the number of noise-producing events would all but eliminate our quiet enjoyment of the property seasonally. So I'm going to refer to the implied covenant of quiet enjoyment, which is the right of an occupant, of real property, particularly of a residence, to enjoy and use the premises in peace and without interference. To be clear, quiet enjoyment is the right to be unimpaired and enjoying the use of any property that has been leased, sold, or conveyed. This means that the owner or occupant of a property can exercise this right even if it is not specifically stated. In the 2019 season, you guys hosted many events, and it did cause undesirable noise, which for me, I'm sensitive, but being out in the lake in the kayak in the evening, I don't want to hear anything that I don't have to. Yes, there's boats, but I just, so we could hear music. And it went across the whole lake. The topographical nature of the land causes a natural amphitheater effect from sounds originating from even great distances. I respectfully request that the Winkley's business not be permitted to make any disturbing noise, nor play any musical instrument, or operate or suffer to be operated a stereo, radio, or electronic device for playing music at such a volume or in such another manner that it shall be heard by owners and occupants next door at 74 Smith Road. Please do not double the allowable numbers of noise-producing events. Definitely double events because they're fantastic, but it's just the noise-producing ones that I have to put on record. Thank you.
And when you could hear the noise, you were on the lake?
Yeah.
How about at your house?
Yes, which is directly behind the field, the cornfield behind the cemetery. So. I
How
don't
do you
think
feel
we-
about all the parties they have on weekends around the lake then?
Well, you know, if we're having a Springsteen concert, bring the music, otherwise, no. So I just wanted to submit a copy of that. Thanks. And you guys have.
People play their videos.
When you have a music event, do you put up any sound blocking paraphernalia? You know, in the direction of the closest neighbors?
We face the music towards the house, which would be away from the lake. So if you're in the field, the speakers face the house, which is the best thing we could do to try to keep it away from.
Could you do? I know when Gelson came in for the patio music,
Right.
we asked them to put up sound. Actually, they'd done it. They have sound absorbing boards behind it.
Well, but
They
in
built
that
that.
case, they were kind of pushing it towards the parking lot. The
But they
other,
still put sound
the other
boards behind
problem
it.
is here, this is sound and
Sound
light.
travel.
Yeah.
Sound and light, you can have a light on and someone says the light's bother me, but you can see a light a billion miles away.
Right.
Sound, the statutes say that they're not to exceed 55 decibels at the property line, which I haven't heard
They're
any
nowhere near
complaints
that.
until today about it. And so that's what you could, whether somebody has a stereo in their backyard playing, like I do when I work in the garden, and I do it every weekend, or they have an event, it's still it's the number. So it's kind of tough to say, you as a residential person can, have Springsteen playing in the radio, but you as having accessory use, I don't want that to happen, but it's the same noise. If it exceeds it, then that's something that we can talk about. But if it hasn't exceeded it, then I can, I can go to their next wedding.
I mean,
I'm
55
not
doesn't
familiar
mean-
with where she lives. How many feet from, say, the tent would her house be?
She's down on the lake.
2,000.
2,000 feet?
It's
That's not
quite a
true,
ways.
it's not a quarter mile.
Oh, yes, it is. The road to Wildwood?
Yeah.
All the way down to the lake?
But if-
As a crow flies.
Well, it's gotta be really close. You had it scaled off on the thing. It's a long
Yeah,
ways.
it's a
What'd you
long
call
ways,
it?
yeah.
It's long.
I'm sorry.
So to get 55 decibels at the property level,
54.
That is,
54.
the property border is the edge of the field.
Yeah, but 54 is, I think, their lawnmower and chainsaws
Saws.
and everything. I mean, he's nowhere near that.
I have to say, I kayak on the lake quite a bit, and I'm on the lake quite a bit. And
There's a lot of
people are all around the lake, have parties constantly all summer. People have fireworks constantly all summer.
We hear
People
boats.
are yelling, they're
Boats
having
rally.
fun. And to
Jet
tell you
skis.
the truth, I'd much rather hear their music than hear all these other rowdy people that live on the lake, around the lake. So I can understand that, yeah, you can hear them, but I mean, you're gonna hear anything. If I talk at Laurel Cove, they could probably hear me at Sunset Acres, because sound travels across water that well. I'd hate to see them not get this approved because they have nice music playing. I'd much rather be able to go over to talk to Kathy Waz and say, hey, listen, can you guys cut it down? Turn it down a little bit, So,
Measured at 2 hours a week is 0.01%.
but that's,
All those hours in 6 months.
but that's just my opinion, because I know the lake. I've lived on the lake my whole life, so.
And as one that lived up the hill from the lake for
And I
a
was
long,
one
long
making
time.
a lot of the noise a lot of the time.
The lakes in itself are noisy. This is not no motors, no cottages, no nothing. It's densely populated. So just the noise from that alone doesn't stop until 10 o'clock and sometimes runs to 11 or midnight.
Right.
And that's from the lake residents. So,
Yeah, we also hear in reverse the noise from the lake as well, which we've been hearing for 35 years. That's how long we've been in the house, and we just never really thought much about it. I don't know. I guess we're not sensitive to the noise. Consider it very much.
Okay, anyone else, anything? Any more information? Okay, I guess I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so they're looking at doubling the 25 events. From May to October, that would leave 3 free weekends without any event if they had everything booked. So that's what we're looking at, from May to October, to the end of October. That's only 3 weeks, free. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. That's what you're looking at.
It's a typical wedding event, 4 hours or?
Typically it's 4 to 10, so you'd have 4 to 5 would be the ceremony, 5
Yeah.
to 6 cocktail hours, 6
Ask
to,
me the next time.
6 to 8, or 8 to 10 is the reception, so that would be different.
Correct.
4 to 10.
But the music doesn't get turned up until after dinner, which is usually around 8 o'clock.
What is the commission?
How about porta potties and that?
Nope. We did close the public
Oh,
hearing.
sorry.
The porta potties, we took care of that in the first one. There's a
Yeah.
formula for the child.
They're all,
Yeah.
The portal
Yeah.
We're all
some pretty
set.
nice ones out there too.
Is everyone okay with a 25 schedule?
Hey,
I'm good.
yeah. And I live right up the road, so,
You guys are neighbors.
right.
What are your thoughts, Bernie?
Yeah, it's, it says, you know, there's a lot of noise on that lake in the summertime, and I can't imagine, that music from that far away can make that significant an impact. I can't say no.
Public hearing closed.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think the whole noise issue is, I mean, I've been working down Wildwood all year, and while you're at Wildwood, you can hear people speaking just in normal tones at Sunset Acres right across the.
Yeah, but you're not there on the weekends, are you?
Oh, yeah, I work all the time, come on.
You do?
I do.
That's when he does stuff without the permits.
I'm saying, I was there a lot.
Yeah.
And you can hear, I mean, and all the people know what they're sitting there, they understand too, that when they're speaking, those people on the other side can hear them too, so. I'm not saying you can't hear it, because you might be able to hear it at a given time when everything else is silent, but there's a lot of stereos and radios and jet skis and whatnot on the lake all the time in the summer, so I mean.
I think we made a scientific breakthrough tonight. Sound travels.
Especially across water.
So I mean, I don't think it should preclude us granting their request, because I think they've got a track record of being respectful, and if there is an issue, I'm sure they'll rise to the occasion, whatever has to be done, so.
Do we have if we approve this, do we have a chance if, we find later on that it might be too much, without them bringing it back, we cannot
Oh,
pull it back?
well, if, let's say, a version of Winkfest came back, well, then they're in violation of their covenants of the approval. A special exception can be withdrawn.
Because it is a special exception.
Correct.
Okay, so if things did get out of hand, then we can
Right.
pull them back in.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's different versus a special exception for a structure they built. You can't say, okay, you gotta take the structure down.
I just wanna make
This
sure.
is a use
Well,
permit.
that brings up a good point. Are we gonna continue to monitor this every year? In terms of
approval.
It's, well, part of it,
Fence.
my thought is that we would send back the same approval letter except change the number of events. So it has the same conditions, nothing leaves. So that you get the lighting, the bathroom, the signage, the annual reporting, all of that stays in place. That'd be my recommendation to staff, is that we're just changing the number of events if you so choose to.
Okay.
Now, should they sell, does this approval go with the property?
Yes.
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 So if somebody, they've been very good stewards.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody picked up the property and became not good stewards, we could always bring them back also.
Correct.
So
It
is
wouldn't
there
be-
some- Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
It wouldn't be carte blanche for the next person, they'd still be under the same.
If they violated, I think, the original terms, we could bring it back.
If they got continued complaints from multiple residents.
Then we can pull them in, or the commission can. Okay. Yeah.
I would bring a report to you, ask for your, you know, what you would like to do. And one of the options you do is to send a notice of violation and have them come in and discuss it. And if it's continuous, you go through the process of withdrawing their
So again,
approval.
they've been great, I have no expectations of it changing, but if we start getting complaints in the next 2 years, we have a right then to call them back in and say.
Correct.
Conditions have changed, we're revisiting this.
Yep.
Without them initiating, so they're kinda still on probation.
Everybody's on probation.
Could we add to the reporting requirements that they report the maximum decibel level of their
I
event?
think that
On
was,
their report, but this report is part of what you'd be still getting, right, John?
Yeah.
Yearly report. I mean, if you're monitoring the decibels, obviously, if you're at 54, you're gonna get a little worried,
Can't
right?
exceed the 50 level.
I'm not concerned about it.
Which is a conversation.
Oh, it's gotta be low, I know it's way down.
Would the rest of the commission like to see that?
Do what? I
I
don't
mean,
think, since there's been no complaints, I don't see you put any more constraints on
Okay.
them, really.
And if we do get the complaints, then we'll monitor it.
Right, then we could always bring them in.
Yeah, I think if we start getting complaints, we go to a formal
Right.
audio monitoring. Having the resident, however well-intentioned, go out and measure with a decibel is not really admissible.
Okay, is that okay, Sue? Okay. Okay, then have we, anything else? Everyone okay?
Good.
Anyone like to?
I'll make a motion that we approve, application number 1914, 60 Smith Road, Smith Farm Gardens, Margaret Winkley owner, amendments to approve special exception permit as submitted.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
green cards to meet them.
Yeah, make sure we get those.
Yeah, actually, can we condition that on getting the green cards?
Yeah.
I won't send the approval letter out.
My son.
So we have questions? Oh, the stuff there, we did before.
I'll send it out as quick as I can.
Yeah, just so we have time to mull it over and
Like to
stuff.
see that,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, that's what I kinda wanna look at, the one stuff. What the attorney brought up and stuff.
I'm sorry, we got a space for them on the board.
You already have one attorney. Okay, any other business? Anyone need?
I'll
Take a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
I have a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Well, we haven't gotten out of here this late in a long time, it's still early.
Jeez.
I know, I left at 1 and the meeting's still going on.
I had to get up and give presentations like 12:45.
What's that?
I had to get up and give presentations after 12. So you're there.
That's-
Carleen Quinn.
To the office.
Don't forget.